The most feared warrior in the galaxy cowers before a house cat. This improbable scene unfolds aboard the interstellar diplomatic vessel Earthrise, where an ill-timed teleportation accident threatens to shatter the fragile peace between Earth and the Eliani Empire. Nolan Griffin, human diplomat and unwitting instigator of galactic chaos, stares at the empty cat bed in his quarters. Moments ago, his feline companion Whiskers had been curled up asleep. Now, only a fading energy signature remains where the cat once lay. Whiskers, Nolan calls, his voice echoing in the suddenly empty room. He notices a teleportation device on his desk, its lights blinking erratically. Realization dawns as he connects the dots between his missing pet and the malfunctioning technology. Alarms blare throughout the ship, red emergency lights bathing the corridors in an ominous glow. The vessel shudders as security bulkheads slam into place, sealing off entire sections. Nolan finds himself trapped, cut off from both his feline friend and the rest of the human delegation. In the personal chambers of Khazar, the legendary Eliani warrior known for single-handedly decimating enemy fleets, chaos erupts. The fearsome alien, his segmented exoskeleton gleaming under the chamber's soft light, backs away from a small, furry creature that has materialized on his meditation mat. Whiskers, oblivious to the pandemonium he's causing, stretches languidly and begins to groom himself. Khazar's compound eyes widen in terror, his mandibles clicking rapidly in distress. "Intruder!" he screeches in his native tongue. Earth weapon detected. The Eliani guards outside Khazar's chambers hear their leader's panic cries. Without hesitation, they initiate a ship-wide lockdown, convinced that the humans have launched a surprise attack. Throughout the Earthrise, Eliani crew members arm themselves, preparing for conflict. Nolan, unaware of the true nature of the crisis, attempts to navigate the suddenly hostile ship. He encounters Celine, an Eliani cultural liaison assigned to the human delegation. The slender, insectoid alien regards him with a mixture of suspicion and concern. "What's happening?" Nolan demands, his diplomat's composure cracking under the strain. Celine's antennae twitch nervously. "Your people have unleashed a weapon in Khazar's quarters. The ship is on high alert." Nolan's mind races, connecting his missing cat to the unfolding crisis. "It's not a weapon," he explains hurriedly. "It's my cat, Whiskers. He must have activated the teleporter in my room." Celine's compound eyes blink in rapid succession, processing this information. "Hey, cat, is this some kind of a joke?" As they speak, the situation deteriorates further. The ship's AI announces rising energy signatures from Eliani weapons, indicating they're preparing to fire on the human sections of the vessel. In space, Eliani warships begin to mobilize, interpreting the chaos aboard the Earthrise as an act of human aggression. Nolan realizes the gravity of the situation. A simple misunderstanding involving his pet cat now threatens to ignite an interstellar war. He turns to Celine, his expression grave. "We need to find Whiskers and explain this to Khazar before it's too late. Will you help me?" Celine hesitates, torn between her duty to her people and the absurdity of the situation. Finally, she nods. "For the sake of peace, I will assist you, but we must hurry." As Nolan and Celine begin their desperate search for Whiskers, the fate of Earth-Eliani relations hangs in the balance. The clock ticks down, with every passing moment bringing them closer to a conflict that could reshape the galaxy. And at the center of it all is a simple house cat, blissfully unaware of the interstellar crisis it has unleashed. Nolan and Celine exchange a determined look before stepping into the dimly lit maintenance tunnel. The narrow passageway buzzes with the hum of the ship's vital systems, a stark contrast to the chaos erupting throughout the rest of the vessel. "This way," Celine whispered, her antennae twitching as she led Nolan through the labyrinth of pipes and conduits. "These tunnels should allow us to bypass most of the security checkpoints." As they navigated the cramped space, The ship's AI, Arya, detected the unauthorized teleportation and initiated a ship-wide scan. Her disembodied voice echoed through the corridors, adding to the growing tension. Attention all crew members. Anomalous energy signature detected. Security protocols engaged. Please remain in your designated areas until further notice. In Khazar's quarters, Whiskers had made himself quite at home. The cat's tail swished lazily as he batted at a small, ornate sphere on a nearby shelf. The object tumbled to the ground, rolling across the floor and colliding with a data tablet. The impact activated the device, projecting a holographic display of classified Eliani battle plans into the air. Khazar, still pressed against the far wall, watched in horror as the Earth weapon seemingly accessed top-secret military information with ease. "By the 7 moons," he muttered, his mandibles clicking rapidly. "It's extracting our most guarded secrets." Meanwhile, in the human section of the ship, Captain Marcus Steele paced the bridge, his face etched with concern. A priority transmission from Earth flashed on the main view screen, demanding his immediate attention. "Captain Steele," the stern face of Admiral Chen appeared on the screen. "We've detected rising tensions aboard the Earthrise. Explain the situation immediately." Steele straightened his uniform, his mind racing. "Admiral, we're dealing with an unexpected security breach. The Eliani have initiated a ship-wide lockdown, and we're working to ascertain the cause." The Admiral's eyes narrowed. "Whatever the issue, you must persistence it peacefully. An interstellar incident now could be catastrophic. You have 1 hour to stabilize the situation, or we'll be forced to intervene." As the transmission ended, Steele turned to his executive officer. "Prepare a security team. If the Eliani won't cooperate, we'll take control of the ship ourselves." In the Eliani-controlled areas, Sub-Commander Zaxlyer barked orders to his troops. "Don protective gear immediately. The humans have unleashed a biological weapon of unknown capabilities." Eliani soldiers scrambled to don their exosuits, the clicking of mandibles and rustling of carapaces filling the air. Zaxlyer activated the ship's communication array, his antennae quivering with urgency. "This is Sub-Commander Zaxlyer to Eliani High Command. We are under attack by human forces. Request immediate reinforcements to neutralize the threat." As tensions escalated on both sides, Nolan and Celine continued their covert journey through the ship's maintenance tunnels. The human diplomat wiped sweat from his brow, the close quarters and constant vibrations of the ship's systems taking their toll. "How much further?" Nolan asked, his voice barely audible over the ambient noise. Celine's compound eyes scanned the tunnel ahead. "We're approaching a junction. From there, we should be able to access." Her words were cut short as they rounded a corner and came face to face with a group of junior officers, both human and Eliani. For a moment, all parties froze, weapons half raised in tense standoff. "Wait!" A young human ensign stepped forward, hands raised in a placating gesture. "We're not here to fight. I'm Jack Harper, and this is Nixera." He indicated the Eliani beside him. "We're trying to understand what's happening and stop this madness before it's too late." Nolan exhaled slowly, lowering his hands. "I'm Nolan Griffin, human diplomat. This is Celine, Eliani cultural liaison. We know what's causing this crisis, and we need to reach Khazar's quarters to explain." Nixera's antennae twitched curiously. "Explain what, exactly?" "It's complicated," Nolan replied, glancing at Celine. "But I assure you, there's no biological weapon. This is all a misunderstanding." After a tense moment of deliberation, Harper nodded. "All right, we'll help you, but we need to move fast. The situation is deteriorating by the minute." The unlikely alliance cautiously made their way through the ship, avoiding patrols and navigating increasingly complex security measures. As they passed through a damaged section of the vessel, Exposed wires sparked ominously, and the acrid smell of burnt circuitry filled the air. "Watch your step," Nyxera warned, her carapace gleaming under the emergency lights. "The damage is worse than I expected." As they rounded another corner, the group stumbled upon a hidden compartment, its door ajar. Inside, rows of sleek, alien weaponry lined the walls, an Eliani arsenal far beyond anything the humans had seen before. Nolan's eyes widened in shock. What is this? Why are there weapons on a diplomatic vessel? Celine and Nyxera exchanged uncomfortable glances, their antennae drooping slightly. Before they could respond, Arya's voice echoed through the ship once more. "Alert! Unusual energy signature detected in high-security area. All senior officers, please acknowledge and investigate." The group shared a worried look, knowing that time was running out. As they approached the final security checkpoint leading to Khazar's quarters, the sound of approaching footsteps from both directions filled them with dread. Nolan stepped forward, his heart pounding. "This is it. Whatever happens next will determine the fate of our species. Are you all ready?" The mixed group of humans and Eliani nodded solemnly, preparing themselves for what lay ahead. As they steeled themselves to make their move, none of them noticed the shadowy figure of Zelthor, the Galactic Council observer, watching intently from a hidden alcove, recording every moment of the unfolding crisis. As Nolan and his unlikely team prepared to make their move, the ship's AI, Arya, suddenly blared to life. Unauthorized movement detected, initiating defensive protocols. The corridor ahead erupted with activity. Energy barriers shimmered into existence, sealing off the path to Khazar's quarters. Panels in the walls slid open, revealing sleek, metallic security drones that hovered menacingly in the air. "We're trapped," Jack exclaimed, his hand instinctively moving to his sidearm. Nyxera's antennae twitched rapidly as she assessed the situation. "Not yet, we're not," she chittered, darting towards a nearby control panel. Her segmented fingers flew over the alien interface with practiced ease. "I can override the barriers, but it won't last long." Celine positioned herself between the advancing drones and Nyxera, her exoskeleton gleaming under the pulsing red emergency lights. "Hurry! We don't have much time." Nolan watched the drones draw closer, their sensors scanning the group intently. The air crackled with tension as Nyxera worked feverishly at the panel. Suddenly, the energy barriers flickered and vanished. "Now!" Nolan shouted, leading the charge down the corridor. They had barely made it halfway when alarms blared throughout the ship. Captain Steele's voice echoed through the comms. "All hands, intruders detected near high-security areas. Apprehend immediately." Almost simultaneously, Sub-Commander Zack Slyer's guttural Eliani speech reverberated through the Eliani communication channels. Human infiltrators sighted. Intercept and neutralize the threat. The group rounded a corner and found themselves face-to-face with a squad of Eliani soldiers led by Lieutenant Vextor. The insectoid aliens raised their weapons, mandibles clicking aggressively. "Stand down!" Vextor commanded, his compound eyes fixed on the intruders. In a flash, Nolan and Jack sprang into action. Nolan ducked under a swing from an Eliani soldier, using the alien's momentum to flip him onto his back. Jack executed a series of quick strikes, disarming two more opponents with practiced efficiency. Celine and Nyxera worked in tandem, their knowledge of Eliani physiology allowing them to incapacitate their foes with precise blows to sensitive nerve clusters. Within moments, the Eliani squad lay groaning on the floor, subdued but largely unharmed. "The door!" Celine called out, rushing to the control panel beside Khazar's quarters. She and Nyxera interfaced with the system, their fingers dancing across the alien technology. "Almost. Got it," Nyxera exclaimed as the door slid open with a hiss. But instead of Khazar's quarters, they found themselves staring into a maintenance shaft. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed from both directions of the corridor. "In here," Nolan urged, ushering the group into the cramped space. The door sealed behind them just as reinforcements arrived, their shouts muffled by the thick metal. As they caught their breath in the dimly lit shaft, the ship lurched violently. Nolan stumbled, catching himself against a pipe. What was that? Arya's voice filled the ship once more, its usual calm tone tinged with urgency. "Warning. Critical system malfunctions detected. Life support systems compromised. Artificial gravity unstable. Communication arrays broadcasting anomalous signals." It must be Whiskers, Nolan realized. He's triggering Eliani technology somehow. The group navigated the narrow maintenance shaft, the ship's erratic movements making their progress difficult. They emerged into a small, hidden compartment filled with data tablets and holographic displays. Jack's eyes widened as he scanned the information. This can't be right. Nolan peered over his shoulder, his face paling as he read. A secret agreement between human and Eliani factions? They're deliberately prolonging the conflict? Celine's antennae drooped in dismay. Weapons manufacturers, political extremists. They're profiting from our people's mistrust. Before they could fully process this revelation, the ship shuddered again, more violently this time. Sparks showered from damaged conduits, and the acrid smell of burning circuitry filled the air. Arya's voice cut through the chaos. "Alert! Weapons cache in diplomatic sector has become unstable. Detonation imminent. Evacuation protocols initiated." Nolan's mind raced. The weapons cache they discovered earlier. It must have been affected by the malfunctions Whiskers was causing. If it exploded, it could destroy the ship and spark a full-scale war. As the gravity shifted again, nearly sending them tumbling, Nolan's communicator crackled to life. A female voice, tense but controlled, came through. "This is Dr. Alara Voss. If anyone can hear me, I have critical information about the Eliani reaction to the Earth creature. I'm trapped in my lab in the human section, surrounded by Eliani forces. Please, this could be the key to stopping this madness." Nolan looked at his companions, their faces a mix of drive and uncertainty. They now faced an impossible choice. Continue their original mission to reach Whiskers and Khazar, attempt to secure the unstable weapons cache, or rescue Dr. Voss and her potentially vital information. The ship groaned around them, systems failing and tensions rising with each passing second. Nolan took a deep breath, knowing that their next decision could change the course of human-Eliani relations forever. "All right," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos. "We need to make a choice, and we need to make it now. What's our move?" "Next move?" Nolan looked at each of his companions, their faces etched with perseverance and fear. The ship shuddered again, reminding them of the urgency of their situation. "We need to split up," Nolan said, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. "Celine and I will continue to Khazar's quarters. We have to reach Whiskers and stop whatever's happening with the Eliani technology." Jack nodded, his eyes sharp. "Nixera and I can handle the weapons cache. We can't risk letting it detonate." "What about Dr. Voss?" Celine asked, her antennae twitching with concern. Nolan tapped his communicator. "Arya, can you hear me?" The AI's voice crackled through the device. "Affirmative, Diplomat Griffin. How may I assist you?" "We need you to guide Dr. Voss to a secure location. Can you do that?" "Certainly. I will establish communication with Dr. Voss and provide her with the safest route to a secure area." With their plans set, the group prepared to separate. Nolan clasped Jack's shoulder. "Be careful. We'll rendezvous as soon as we can." As they parted ways, Nolan and Celine hurried towards Khazar's quarters. The ship's corridors had become a maze of malfunctioning systems and flickering lights. Suddenly, they found themselves in a section where the artificial gravity had failed completely. Nolan's stomach lurched as he felt his feet leave the ground. "Celine," he called out, reaching for her. The Eliani liaison grabbed his hand, her compound eyes scanning their surroundings. "We can use this to our advantage," she chittered. "Follow my lead." With practiced ease, Celine pushed off a nearby wall, propelling them both down the corridor. Nolan marveled at her agility as they navigated the zero-gravity environment, using walls, ceilings, and exposed pipes to maneuver past startled Eliani guards. As they approached Khazar's quarters, Nolan spotted an Eliani technician frantically working at a nearby control panel. He gestured to Celine, and they glided towards the alien. "Excuse me," Nolan said, trying to keep his voice calm as he floated upside down. "We need to get into Khazar's quarters. It's a matter of utmost importance." The technician's antennae flattened against his head. "Impossible. The entire section is under emergency lockdown." Nolan took a deep breath, calling upon years of diplomatic training. "Listen, I understand your concern, but the fate of both our species hangs in the balance. We have information that could prevent a war, but we need to speak with Khazar immediately." The technician hesitated, his compound eyes darting between Nolan and Celine. Finally, he nodded. "I'll try to override the lock, but I can't guarantee it will work." As the technician worked, Nolan's thoughts turned to Jack and Nixera, hoping they were having better luck with the weapons cache. In another part of the ship, Jack and Nixera raced through crowded corridors. They encountered a group of junior officers, both human and Eliani, huddled together, looking lost and afraid. Jack skidded to a halt. "Listen up," he shouted, his voice cutting through the din. "We've got a situation with the weapons cache, and we need your help. Who here has experience with damage control?" Several hands and antennae raised. Jack quickly organized them into teams, assigning tasks to stabilize the ship's failing systems as they made their way to the cache. "Remember," he called out as they moved, "we're all in this together. Human or Eliani, it doesn't matter now. What matters is saving the ship and everyone on it." As they worked their way through the ship, Jack couldn't help but feel a sense of pride in how quickly the mixed crew came together in the face of danger. Meanwhile, Dr. Alara Voss clutched her data pad to her chest as she navigated the chaotic corridors of the human section. Arya's calm voice guided her through the safest routes, helping her avoid Eliani patrols. "Dr. Voss, please proceed to the next junction and turn left," Arya instructed. As Voss rounded the corner, she stumbled upon a hidden room. The door was ajar, and she could hear voices inside. Curiosity overtook her caution, and she crept closer to listen. "The plan is working perfectly," a human voice said. "With both sides at each other's throats, we'll be able to extend this conflict for years." An Eliani voice chittered in agreement. "Yes, and our weapons contracts will ensure we profit handsomely from the chaos." Voss's eyes widened in shock. She quickly recorded the conversation on her data pad before slipping away, her mind racing with the implications of what she'd just heard. Back at Khazar's quarters, the Eliani technician finally managed to override the door lock. As it slid open, Nolan and Celine pushed themselves inside, only to find a scene they hadn't expected. Khazar, the fearsome Eliani warrior, was huddled in a corner, his massive frame shaking. And there, curled up on top of Khazar's ornate battle armor, was Whiskers, sleeping peacefully. Nolan blinked in disbelief. "Khazar," he said softly, trying not to startle either the warrior or the cat. "We need to talk. The situation has escalated, and we need your help to prevent a war." Khazar's eyes darted between Nolan and the sleeping cat. "Keep that creature away from me," he hissed, his mandibles clicking in fear. Nolan took a step forward, his hands raised placatingly. "Khazar, please. Whiskers is harmless." He's just a... Suddenly, the ship lurched violently. Nolan lost his balance and instinctively reached out to steady himself. His hand closed around Whiskers, and before he could react, he had scooped the cat into his arms. Khazar let out a terrified screech, pressing himself further into the corner. Whiskers, startled awake by the commotion, tensed in Nolan's arms. Then, with a powerful leap, the cat sprang from Nolan's grasp directly towards Khazar. Time seemed to slow as Whiskers sailed through the air, his target the head of the galaxy's most feared predator. Nolan watched in horror, knowing that the fate of human-Eliani relations now hinged on this moment. As Whiskers landed on Khazar's head, the Eliani warrior froze, his eyes wide with terror. The cat, oblivious to the diplomatic crisis he had just caused, began to purr contentedly. Before anyone could react, Arya's voice filled the room. Alert! Multiple Eliani warships detected. They have dropped out of faster-than-light travel and are moving into attack positions. Nolan's heart sank as he realized the reinforcements Zaxlyr had called for had arrived. The situation had just become infinitely more complicated, and time was running out. With Whiskers perched atop the paralyzed Khazar, Eliani warships closing in, and the weapons cache still in danger of detonating, Nolan knew he had to act fast. The next few moments would determine not just the fate of the Earthrise, but potentially the future of human-Eliani relations across the galaxy. Nolan held his breath, watching as Whiskers made contact with Khazar's head. But instead of the expected violent reaction, something extraordinary happened. Khazar's body went rigid, his eyes widening not with fear, but with an expression Nolan had never seen on an Eliani face before. The fearsome warrior's mandibles relaxed and a low, rumbling sound emanated from his throat. "What's happening?" Selene whispered, her antennae twitching with curiosity. Nolan shook his head, equally baffled. "I'm not sure, but I think he's enjoying it." As Whiskers settled onto Khazar's head, purring contentedly, the Eliani warrior's eyes began to glaze over. His muscular frame, moments ago tense with terror, now slumped against the wall in a state of apparent bliss. Seizing the opportunity, Nolan approached cautiously. "Khazar," he said softly, "I know this is strange, but please listen to me. Whiskers isn't a weapon. He's just a pet, a companion species from Earth. We never intended any harm." Khazar's eyes slowly focused on Nolan, the usual intensity in his gaze replaced by an uncharacteristic calm. I feel different," he rumbled, his voice lacking its usual edge. "This creature, it's affecting my neural pathways somehow." Selene moved closer, her scientific curiosity piqued. "Fascinating. It seems the tactile sensation of the cat's fur, combined with the vibrations of its purring, is triggering a powerful relaxation response in your sensory system." As Nolan explained the situation to the now docile Khazar, Arya's voice cut through the moment of calm. "Alert! Eliani warships have taken up attack positions. They are demanding immediate surrender of the Earthrise and turnover of the alleged biological weapon." The gravity of the situation hit Nolan anew. They had made progress with Khazar, but the threat of interstellar war still loomed large. Suddenly, the ship-wide communication system crackled to life. A new voice, one Nolan didn't recognize, filled the air. "Attention all crew members and Eliani forces. This is Zelthor, Galactic Council Observer. I am breaking protocol to address the urgent situation at hand." Nolan and Selene exchanged shocked glances. "A Galactic Council Observer? On board the whole time?" Zelthor continued, their voice carrying an air of authority that transcended species. "I have uncovered evidence of a conspiracy designed to prolong conflict between humans and Eliani. This manufactured crisis serves only to benefit a select few who profit from our mutual distrust. I urge all parties to cease hostile actions immediately." As the revelation sank in, Khazar slowly rose to his feet, careful not to dislodge Whiskers. I must speak with my forces, he said, his voice regaining some of its usual strength. This changes everything. Nolan nodded, relief washing over him. Yes, please. Tell them about Whiskers. Explain that there's no biological weapon. We need to stop this before it escalates further. Khazar moved to the communication panel. Whiskers still perched atop his head like an improbable crown. As he opened the channel to Subcommander Zaxlyer, Nolan's thoughts turned to Jack and Nixera. Had they managed to secure the weapons cache? In another part of the ship, Jack and Nixera stood in the sealed weapons section, their mission accomplished, but their situation precarious. We've stabilized the cache, Jack said, wiping sweat from his brow. But now we're trapped in here. Any ideas on how to get out? Nixera's compound eyes scanned the room, settling on a small, nondescript panel near the floor. There, she chittered, moving towards it. That looks like an access point to the ship's maintenance tunnels. As they worked to open the panel, they heard Zelthor's announcement echoing through the ship. Jack paused, his face a mix of surprise and determination. A conspiracy? That explains a lot. We need to get out of here and find out more. With a final push, the panel gave way, revealing a dimly lit passage. Jack peered into the darkness, then looked back at Nixera. This could lead us to more information about this conspiracy, but it might also take us further from the action. What do you think we should do? Before Nixera could respond, they heard a commotion from the other side of the weapons section sealed door. Muffled voices and the sound of tools working on the lock reached their ears. Someone's trying to get in, Nixera observed, her antennae twitching nervously. Jack glanced between the open passage and the sealed door, knowing they had to make a decision quickly. The fate of two species might depend on what they discovered next, but they also couldn't afford to be cut off from the rapidly unfolding events on the ship. As they weighed their options, the ship shuddered again, a reminder of the precarious situation they all faced. Outside, the Eliani warships held their positions, their weapons primed and ready. The next few moments would determine whether diplomacy would prevail or if the galaxy would be plunged into a war based on a terrible misunderstanding. In the heart of the Earthrise, with Whiskers still calmly perched on his head, Khazar prepared to address his forces and potentially change the course of history. The fate of human-Eliani relations hung in the balance, with a small, purring Earth cat unwittingly at the center of it all. As Khazar prepared to address his forces, Captain Steele's voice crackled over the intercom. Attention all personnel. We are initiating emergency security protocols. All non-essential crew members are to return to their quarters immediately. Security teams, report to your designated stations along the main corridor. Nolan's eyes widened as he realized the implications. The Eliani delegation, he breathed. They're coming aboard. Khazar, still looking slightly dazed with Whiskers perched on his head, nodded. We must meet with them at once. The fate of our species depends on it. I'll go, Nolan volunteered, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. I can act as a liaison between our groups. As Nolan moved towards the door, Dr. Alara Voss burst into the room, her face flushed with excitement. Wait, she called out, clutching her data pad. I've made a breakthrough in my analysis of Eliani physiology. Celine's antennae perked up with interest. What have you found, Doctor? Voss took a deep breath, her words tumbling out in a rush. The Eliani's highly evolved predatory instincts are accompanied by an unexpected vulnerability. They have an extreme sensitivity to non-threatening stimuli, particularly those associated with small, furry creatures. Nolan glanced at Whiskers, still contentedly purring atop Khazar's head. That explains a lot, he murmured. Before they could discuss further, Arya's voice filled the room. Alert! Eliani shuttle approaching docking bay. Commander Draz Khan, and a team of 5 Eliani warriors are aboard. Khazar straightened, his warrior's instincts overriding his recent cat-induced stupor. "We must greet them," he declared, reaching up to remove whiskers from his head. As Khazar placed the cat on the ground, Nolan bent to scoop him up. "I'll make sure Whiskers stays put this time," he said, moving to secure the feline in a nearby storage compartment. But as Nolan turned back, he realized his mistake. The compartment door hung open, and Whiskers was nowhere to be seen. "Oh no," Nolan groaned. "He's escaped again." Before they could begin a search, Arya's voice returned, more urgent than before. "Warning, unauthorized access detected in weapons section. Security breach in progress." Nolan's mind raced. "Jack and Nyxera," he said. "They must have found something." As the group hurried from Khazar's quarters, they could hear the distant sound of boots echoing through the corridors. The Eliani delegation was on its way. Tension filled the air as security teams from both species lined the hallways, their weapons held at the ready. The atmosphere crackled with barely suppressed hostility. Nolan, Khazar, Selene, and Dr. Voss moved swiftly through the ship, their steps quickening as they heard the approaching Eliani delegation. As they rounded a corner, they froze at the sight before them. Commander Drazkon and his team of Eliani warriors stood in the corridor, their postures rigid with shock. And there, sitting calmly in the middle of the hallway, was Whiskers. The effect on the Eliani warriors was instantaneous and extreme. 2 of them raised their weapons, mandibles clicking furiously. Another cowered against the wall, eyes wide with terror. Drazkon himself seemed frozen in place, his body trembling slightly as he stared at the small, furry creature. Nolan stepped forward, his hands raised in a placating gesture. "Commander Drazkon," he said, keeping his voice low and calm. "Please remain calm. This is Whiskers. He's not a weapon or a threat. He's just a pet, a companion species from Earth." Drazkon's eyes darted between Nolan and Whiskers, his voice strained as he spoke. This is the alleged biological weapon?" "It's a misunderstanding," Khazar interjected, moving to stand beside Nolan. "I too reacted with fear when I first encountered this creature, but I assure you, it poses no danger." As they spoke, Whiskers stood, stretching languidly before padding towards the Eliani delegation. The warriors tensed, some raising their weapons higher, while others pressed themselves against the walls. Nolan held his breath, knowing the next few moments could determine the fate of human-Eliani relations. He watched as Whiskers approached Commander Drazkon, the cat's tail held high in a friendly greeting. Drazkon remained motionless as Whiskers rubbed against his leg, a low purr rumbling through the tense silence of the corridor. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the Eliani commander's posture began to relax. I don't understand," Drazkon said, his voice tinged with confusion. "Why do I feel calm?" Dr. Voss stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overriding her caution. "It's a physiological response," she explained. "The tactile sensation of the cat's fur, combined with the vibrations of its purring, triggers a powerful relaxation response in your sensory system." As the tension in the corridor began to ease, Arya's voice cut through the moment. "Alert! Energy surge detected in teleportation device. Unable to pinpoint source due to ongoing system malfunctions." Nolan's eyes widened as he processed this new threat. "Arya, can you give us any more information?" "Negative," the AI responded. "Source of anomaly remains unknown. Potential for new entities to materialize aboard the Earthrise cannot be ruled out." The corridor fell silent as both humans and Eliani absorbed this new information. The temporary calm brought by Whisker's presence was now overshadowed by the looming threat of an unknown danger. Nolan looked around at the gathered group, Eliani warriors, human crew, and one small Earth cat, all now united in the face of a potential new threat. He knew that the next few moments would be crucial, not just for the Earthrise, but for the future of human-alien relations throughout the galaxy. As they stood there, poised on the brink of either conflict or cooperation, the ship's systems crackled with static. A new voice, unfamiliar and urgent, began to broadcast throughout the Earthrise. The message it carried would change everything. The message it carried would change everything. This is Admiral Junka of the Galactic Peacekeeping Force. A stern voice boomed through the ship's communication systems. We have detected unauthorized weapons discharge and potential treaty violations in this sector. All ships are ordered to stand down immediately. The corridor fell silent as both humans and Eliani absorbed this new development. Nolan, recognizing the critical nature of the situation, sprang into action. He swiftly approached the Eliani delegation, positioning himself between Whiskers and the panicked warriors. "Commander Drazkon," Nolan said, his voice steady and assertive, "I understand your concerns, but I assure you there's been a grave misunderstanding." He gestured towards Whiskers, who was now contentedly grooming himself. "This is not a weapon. It's a companion animal from Earth, completely harmless and domesticated." Drazkon's compound eyes flickered between Nolan and the cat, mandibles clicking nervously. "But the reports, the devastating effects on our kind." Dr. Voss stepped forward, her data pad at the ready. "If I may, Commander," she interjected, "I've made a breakthrough in understanding Eliani physiology. Your species has an extreme sensitivity to non-threatening stimuli, particularly those associated with small, furry creatures. It's not a weapon. It's an unintended sensory overload." As she spoke, Captain Steele arrived with a small team of human diplomats and xenobiologists. They carried holographic projectors, quickly setting them up to display a variety of Earth animals, from household pets to wild creatures. "As you can see," one of the diplomats explained, gesturing to the holograms, "Earth is home to a diverse array of fauna. Many, like Whiskers here, have coexisted with humans for thousands of years as companions and partners." The Eliani warriors watched the displays with a mixture of fascination and lingering apprehension. Their aggressive postures began to soften as understanding dawned. Suddenly, Arya's voice cut through the moment of progress. "Alert! Energy surge detected in secondary teleportation chamber. Location: maintenance level, section 47B." Captain Steele's eyes widened. "Secondary chamber? I wasn't aware we had one." "Nor was I, Captain," Arya replied. "It appears to have been concealed by sophisticated cloaking technology." Steele quickly tapped his communicator. "Lieutenant Commander Campbell, assemble a security team and investigate this hidden chamber immediately. Approach with caution. We don't know what we're dealing with." As Campbell acknowledged the order, Nolan noticed Whiskers had managed to slip past him. The cat padded confidently towards Commander Drazkon, tail held high. "Commander, don't move," Nolan said softly, trying not to alarm the Eliani leader. "He's just being friendly. Let him approach, and try to remain calm." Drazkon stood rigidly, his entire body trembling as Whiskers rubbed against his leg. A low, rumbling purr filled the tense silence of the corridor. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the Eliani commander's posture began to relax. "This sensation," Drazkon said, his voice filled with wonder. "It's not unpleasant." The other Eliani warriors watched in astonishment as their feared leader peacefully coexisted with the supposed weapon. The sight caused a ripple effect, their perception of humans and Earth fauna shifting dramatically. Meanwhile, deep within the ship's maintenance tunnels, Lieutenant Commander Campbell and his team navigated a maze of corridors. They encountered a series of sophisticated security measures: retinal scanners, biometric locks, and energy fields that seemed far beyond standard human or Eliani technology. "Sir," one of the security officers whispered, "these systems, They're like nothing I've ever seen. Campbell nodded grimly. Stay alert. Whatever's in that chamber, someone went to great lengths to keep it hidden. In the weapons section, Jack and Nixera found themselves cornered by a group of armed conspirators, a mix of human and Eliani extremists. Hand over the data core, a masked human demanded, weapon trained on Jack's chest. Now! Jack's mind raced, eyes darting around the room. He caught Nixera's gaze, a silent understanding passing between them. All right, Jack said, slowly reaching for his pocket. Just don't do anything rash. In a flash, Nixera's appendages flew across a nearby control panel. Alarms blared as the room's power conduits began to overload. Blinding light and crackling energy filled the space, providing the diversion they needed. Jack grabbed Nixera's arm, pulling her towards a maintenance hatch. Now's our chance. As chaos erupted across the ship, Zelthor, the Galactic Council observer, worked furiously at a hidden console. Data streamed across the screen, encrypted transmissions firing off to unknown recipients. Subcommander Zaxlyer, who had been tracking the observer's movements, watched from the shadows. His suspicions grew as he noticed the advanced alien technology Zelthor was using, far beyond anything he had encountered before. On the bridge, Captain Steele received another urgent update from Arya. Captain, multiple Eliani warships are powering down their weapon systems. It appears Subcommander Zaxlyer's earlier communication has had an effect. Steele allowed himself a moment of hope. It's a start, he muttered, but we're not out of the woods yet. As these events unfolded simultaneously across the ship, the crew of the Earthrise found themselves at a crossroads. The immediate diplomatic crisis showed signs of resolution, but new threats loomed on the horizon. The hidden teleportation chamber, corner conspirators, and Zelthor's mysterious activities all represented potential challenges to the fragile peace. In the corridor, Nolan watched as Commander Drazcon hesitantly reached out to touch Whisker's fur. The Eliani leader's hand trembled slightly, but his eyes shone with a newfound curiosity. Perhaps, Drazcon said slowly, we have much to learn from each other. Nolan nodded, a cautious smile forming on his face. I couldn't agree more, Commander. This is just the beginning. Beginning. As Nolan finished speaking, a series of urgent alarms blared throughout the ship, causing both humans and Eliani to flinch. Captain Steele's voice crackled over the intercom, his tone tense but controlled. This is Captain Steele. All personnel, we have a developing situation. I need everyone to remain calm and follow instructions carefully. Nolan and Commander Drazcon exchanged glances, their newfound understanding put to the test. Steele continued, We've detected an unknown energy source in a hidden chamber aboard the Earthrise. I'm proposing an immediate joint Human-Eliani task force to investigate. Commander Drazcon, your cooperation would be invaluable in this matter. There was a moment of hesitation as all eyes turned to the Eliani commander. Drazcon's gaze flickered between Nolan and Whiskers, who was still contentedly purring at his feet. The calming effect of the cat seemed to sway his decision. Agreed, Captain, Drazcon responded, his mandibles clicking softly. We will assist in this investigation. Nolan couldn't help but smile at the unexpected turn of events. Just moments ago, they had been on the brink of interspecies conflict, and now they were forming a joint task force. He quickly composed himself and addressed the group. All right, let's move. We need to coordinate with the security team already en route to the chamber. As they made their way through the ship's corridors, Arya's voice provided updates on the unfolding situation. Alert! Lieutenant Commander Campbell's team has reached the hidden chamber. Breaching final security barrier now. The mixed group of humans and Eliani quickened their pace, the gravity of the situation sinking in. Suddenly, a violent tremor shook the ship, nearly knocking them off their feet. Emergency lights flashed, bathing the corridor in an eerie red glow. "What was that?" Nolan shouted, steadying himself against a wall. Arya's voice crackled through the intercom, her usual calm tone tinged with urgency. "Explosion detected in the weapons section. Critical systems damaged. Emergency bulkheads activating." Before anyone could react, heavy metal doors slammed shut around them, sealing off sections of the ship. Nolan found himself separated from half of the task force, including Commander Drazkon. "Arya, status report," he called out, pressing against the bulkhead. "Multiple sections of the ship have been isolated due to emergency protocols," the AI responded, attempting to bypass safety measures and restore access. As Nolan and his reduced team regrouped, Captain Steele's voice came through their comms. "Nolan, we've got a bigger problem. Arya's detected a massive energy spike from the hidden chamber. It's building to critical levels." Nolan's mind raced, processing the rapidly escalating crisis. "What are our options, Captain?" There was a heavy pause before Steele responded. "We're looking at two choices: initiate emergency evacuation or attempt to contain the surge." The weight of the decision hung in the air. Evacuation would mean abandoning the Earthrise and potentially losing all the progress they'd made in human-alien relations. But attempting to contain an unknown energy source could be catastrophic if they failed. As Nolan considered their options, his eyes fell on Whiskers, who had somehow managed to stay with the group despite the chaos. An idea, as improbable as it seemed, began to form in his mind. "Captain," Nolan said, his voice filled with a mixture of uncertainty and grit, "I have a suggestion. It's going to sound crazy, but given our limited options, it might be worth a shot." "Go ahead, Nolan. At this point, I'm open to anything." Nolan took a deep breath. "We've seen how Whiskers has an unusual effect on Eliani technology and biology. What if we could use that to our advantage? If we can get him to the central control hub, maybe we can use his unique abilities to interface with the ship systems and stabilize the energy surge." The silence that followed was deafening. Nolan could almost hear the disbelief in Steele's voice when he finally responded. "You want to use a cat to save the ship?" "I know how it sounds, sir, but dash." "Do it," Steele interrupted. "We're out of conventional options. If there's even a chance this could work, we have to try." With the captain's approval, Nolan's team sprang into action. They navigated through the maze of sealed corridors, using maintenance tunnels and emergency access ways to make their way towards the central control hub. As they moved, Arya provided updates on the deteriorating situation. Energy levels in the hidden chamber continuing to rise. Estimated time to critical overload: 15 minutes. The race against time added to the tension as they finally reached the central control hub. The room was a hive of activity, with both human and Eliani technicians working frantically at various consoles. Nolan approached the main control panel, Whiskers cradled in his arms. He placed the cat gently on the console, watching in anticipation as Whiskers padded across the glowing surfaces. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, as if responding to some unheard command, Whiskers placed a paw on a specific section of the console. The ship system suddenly came to life, displays flickering with streams of data. Arya's voice filled the room, a note of surprise in her synthetic tones. Detecting unusual interface with ship systems. Energy surge beginning to stabilize. A collective sigh of relief swept through the control hub. But their respite was short-lived as alarms began blaring once again. "New energy signature detected," Arya announced. "Unknown teleportation event in progress." Nolan's eyes widened as he realized this crisis was just the beginning. Whatever was coming through that teleportation vortex, it was clear that the fate of the Earthrise, and perhaps the future of human-Eliani relations, hung in the balance. As the room erupted into a flurry of activity, Nolan steeled himself for whatever challenges lay ahead. The true test of their newfound cooperation was about to begin. The teleportation vortex pulsed with an otherworldly energy, casting an eerie glow throughout the control hub. Nolan's eyes widened as he realized the true magnitude of the crisis unfolding before them. Suddenly, the ship's structure groaned, metal twisting under the strain of the growing energy surge. Sparks flew from nearby consoles as systems overloaded, creating a cacophony of alarms and warnings. "We need to stabilize this now." Captain Steele's voice cut through the chaos. He turned to see Commander Drazcon and a newly arrived human officer entering the hub. "Admiral Frost, we thought you were Dash." "Reports of my death were greatly exaggerated, Captain," Admiral Helena Frost interrupted, her stern gaze sweeping the room. "We have more pressing matters to discuss." As if on cue, Nolan burst into the hub with Whiskers in his arms. The cat leaped from his grasp, landing gracefully on the main control panel. To everyone's astonishment, Whiskers' paws seemed to activate dormant interfaces, causing holographic displays to flicker to life with streams of incomprehensible data. "What in the name of Dash?" Drazcon started, mandibles clicking in confusion. "I don't understand it either," Nolan admitted, watching as Whiskers navigated the alien systems with uncanny precision. "But right now, he might be our best shot at figuring this out." Zelthor, the Galactic Council observer, stepped forward, holding an advanced-looking device. "This containment unit may be able to stabilize the energy surge, but it requires simultaneous activation by both a human and an Eliani." Captain Steele and Commander Drazcon exchanged wary glances. The tension between them was palpable, but the gravity of the situation outweighed their mistrust. "Together, then," Steele said, reaching for the device. As they prepared to activate the containment unit, a violent tremor shook the ship. Arya's voice echoed through the hub. "Warning. Teleportation vortex expanding. Affected areas experiencing space-time distortions." Admiral Frost's expression hardened. "Captain, Commander, there's something you need to know. I've been working undercover, investigating a multi-species conspiracy. Several high-ranking officials from both our governments have been prolonging this conflict for personal gain." Before anyone could react to this revelation, Jack Harper and Nixera burst into the hub, clutching a data core. "We've got proof," Jack exclaimed, breathing heavily. "The conspiracy, it's all here." As Nixera connected the data core to a nearby console, Arya's voice cut through the commotion. "Energy surge at critical levels. Structural failure imminent. Time to complete system failure, 3 minutes." Nolan's mind raced. He looked at Whiskers, still interfacing with the ship's systems, then at Zelthor's containment device. An idea formed. "We need to link Whiskers directly to Arya's primary systems," Nolan suggested, his voice urgent. "It's our only chance to stabilize the ship." Zelthor nodded, producing a small neural link device. "This should suffice, but the process could be dangerous for the feline." Without hesitation, Nolan carefully attached the neural link to Whiskers. The moment the connection was made, the ship's system surged to life. Holographic displays filled the hub, showing complex algorithms and schematics as Whiskers' consciousness navigated the damaged software. Simultaneously, Captain Steele and Commander Drazcon activated the containment device. A shimmering energy field expanded, enveloping the growing vortex. The combined efforts of Whiskers' interface and the alien technology began to push back the energy surge. For a moment, it seemed they had averted disaster. Then, Subcommander Zack Slyer burst into the hub with a team of Eliani warriors, weapons raised. "Zelthor," Zack Slyer shouted, "you will be detained for questioning. Your manipulation of our species ends now." Admiral Frost stepped between Zack Slyer and Zelthor. "Stand down, Subcommander. The situation is more complex than you realize." I have information about the Galactic Council's true intentions for both our species. Before Frost could elaborate, alarms blared once again. Arya's voice filled the hub. Warning. Energy surge containment successful, but faster-than-light drive experiencing cascade failure. Space-time rupture imminent. Potential destruction of surrounding star system. Captain Steele's face paled. Arya, initiate emergency evacuation protocols for all non-essential personnel. How many need to stay behind to stabilize the drive? A minimum of 5 crew members required in engineering to manually stabilize the FDL drive. Arya responded. As chaos erupted with crew members and diplomats rushing to evacuate, Nolan stepped forward. I'll lead the team to engineering. We can stabilize the drive. To everyone's surprise, Commander Drazcon moved to stand beside Nolan. I will join you. Our species must work together if we are to survive this. Captain Steele nodded grimly. Go. We'll manage the evacuation and containment from here. As Nolan and Drazcon assembled a small team of volunteers, both human and Eliani, the gravity of their mission sank in. They were about to attempt something never before done. A joint operation to save not just a ship, but potentially an entire star system. With a final glance at Whiskers, still connected to the ship systems, Nolan led his team out of the hub. They raced through corridors filled with panicked crew members, the ship groaning and shuddering around them. Engineering deck, 2 levels down. Nolan shouted over the cacophony of alarms. We've got less than 5 minutes before total drive failure. As they reached the entrance to engineering, a massive tremor shook the ship. Sparks rained down from ruptured conduits, and the acrid smell of burning circuitry filled the air. Commander Drazcon's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of Eliani's stress. What's the plan, Griffin? Nolan took a deep breath, surveying the chaotic engineering bay. Banks of computers flickered with warning messages, and the central FTL drive pulsed with unstable energy. We need to manually reset the drive's quantum alignment, Nolan explained, moving towards the main control station. It's going to take all of us working in perfect sync. As the team spread out across the engineering bay, each taking a position at a critical system, Nolan felt the weight of their mission. The fate of the Earthrise, its crew, and perhaps the entire star system now rested in their hands. With a nod to Commander Drazcon, Nolan placed his hands on the control panel. On my mark, we begin the reset sequence. 3, 2, 1. The engineering bay erupted into a flurry of activity as Human and Eliani worked side by side, racing against time to prevent a catastrophe that could reshape the galaxy. Galaxy. Nolan's fingers flew across the control panel, initiating the reset sequence. The engineering bay hummed with energy as Human and Eliani crew members worked in unison, their differences set aside in the face of impending disaster. Suddenly, a violent tremor rocked the ship, nearly throwing Nolan off his feet. The metal floor beneath him buckled, and emergency lights flickered ominously. Status report. Nolan shouted over the din of alarms and creaking metal. An Eliani engineer, her exoskeleton gleaming under the emergency lights, responded, FDL drive containment field weakening. We're losing stability. Commander Drazcon's mandibles clicked rapidly as he assessed the situation. We need to reroute power from non-essential systems. Griffin, can you access the main power grid? Nolan nodded, his fingers already dancing across the holographic interface. As he worked, the ship shuddered again, more violently this time. The sound of tearing metal echoed through the engineering bay, and Nolan watched in horror as a section of the ceiling collapsed, blocking their exit. We're trapped, one of the human engineers shouted, panic evident in his voice. Drazcon's compound eyes surveyed the wreckage. Focus on the task at hand. We save the ship, we save ourselves. Nolan gritted his teeth and returned to his work, acutely aware of the ticking clock. The ship's structure continued to groan and twist around them, corridors warping under the strain of the destabilizing FDL drive. Meanwhile, in the central control hub, Captain Steele, Admiral Frost, and Zelthor grapple with the escalating crisis. Holographic displays flickered with urgent reports as escape pods launched from the Earthrise. Evacuation is at 60%, Arya reported. Estimate complete evacuation in 7 minutes. Admiral Frost's eyes narrowed as she studied the tactical display. Captain, we have a new problem. Multiple warp signatures detected. A large fleet is incoming, both human and Eliani ships. Steele's face paled. If they arrive before we dedication this crisis, it could reignite the entire conflict, Frost finished grimly. Zelthor stepped forward, his alien features unreadable. There may be another complication, Captain. My sensors are detecting an anomalous energy signature. Something is decloaking near our position. As if on cue, a massive ship materialized beside the Earthrise, dwarfing both human and Eliani vessels. Its sleek, otherworldly design left no doubt about its advanced nature. Galactic Council Peacekeeping Force, Zelthor murmured, his tone a mixture of awe and concern. The ship began broadcasting a message in multiple languages. Attention, Earthrise. This is the Galactic Council Vessel Harmonious Intervention. We are aware of your situation and offer our assistance. Please respond. Captain Steele exchanged wary glances with Admiral Frost. The arrival of the Galactic Council ship added a new layer of complexity to an already chaotic situation. What do we know about their intentions? Steele asked, his voice low. Frost shook her head. Not enough. The conspiracy I uncovered. It's possible the Galactic Council is involved. We can't be certain of their motives. As Steele weighed his options, Arya's voice cut through the tension. Update on Whisker's interface. The feline's neural patterns are continuing to repair critical systems. Estimate 15% increase in overall ship stability. On a nearby console, Dr. Ilera Voss's face appeared in a calm window. Captain, I've made a breakthrough. Whisker's connection to the ship. It's more than just a fluke. The cat's neural patterns, combined with residual energy from the teleportation accident, have created a symbiotic link with our quantum processors. He's repairing systems in ways we couldn't even imagine. This revelation was interrupted by another violent shudder of the ship. Steele steadied himself against the console, his decision crystallizing. Arya, open a channel to the Galactic Council ship, he ordered. We'll accept their help, but cautiously. Admiral Frost, continue working on exposing the conspiracy. We need to get ahead of this before the fleet arrives. In engineering, Nolan and Drazkon's team had made progress, stabilizing the FDL drive, but something was wrong. Nolan frowned as he studied the readouts, a suspicion forming in his mind. Commander, he called out to Drazkon, these fluctuations, they're not random. I think the drive was sabotaged. Drazkon moved swiftly to Nolan's side, his compound eyes scanning the data. You're right. This damage pattern is too precise to be accidental. An Eliani engineer named Krelvor approached, holding a small device. I found this embedded in the drive's coolant system. It's some kind of sabotage device, but I've never seen technology like this before. As they examined the device, the implications of their discovery sank in. The crisis they were facing wasn't just an accident. It was part of a carefully orchestrated plan. Nolan's mind raced. We need to neutralize this thing and stabilize the drive. But if this is part of a larger conspiracy, then our problems are a long way to go, Drazkon finished, his mandibles clicking in agitation. With renewed urgency, the team set to work, knowing that their actions in the next few minutes could determine not just the fate of the Earthrise, but potentially the future of human-Eliani relations. As they raced against time, the ship continued to groan and shudder around them, a constant reminder of the thin line between survival and catastrophe. Catastrophe, the fate of the Earthrise, its crew, and perhaps the entire star system now rested in their hands. As Nolan's fingers danced across the control panel, initiating the reset sequence, the engineering bay erupted into a flurry of activity. Human and Eliani crew members worked side by side, their differences set aside in the face of impending disaster. Suddenly, Krelvor, an Eliani engineer, approached Nolan and Drazkon, holding a small device. "I found this embedded in the drive's coolant system," he reported, his mandibles clicking with concern. "It's some kind of sabotage device, but I've never seen technology like this before." Nolan and Drazkon exchanged glances, the implications of this discovery sinking in. The crisis they were facing wasn't just an accident. It was part of a carefully orchestrated plan. "We need to neutralize this thing and stabilize the drive," Nolan said, his mind racing. "But if this is part of a larger conspiracy, then our problems are not nearly finished," Drazkon finished, his compound eyes scanning the device intently. As they examined the sabotage device more closely, it became clear that it was far more complex than initially thought. Its intricate design incorporated both human and Eliani technology, suggesting a level of collaboration that sent shivers down Nolan's spine. "This is going to take both of our expertise to disarm," Nolan realized aloud. He turned to address the mixed team of human and Eliani engineers. "Listen up, everyone. We need to work together on this. Human ingenuity and Eliani technical know-how. It's the only way we're going to beat this thing." Nolan's diplomatic skills came to the forefront as he began coordinating the efforts of the diverse team. He quickly assigned tasks, pairing humans and Eliani together based on their individual strengths. As they worked, Nolan moved between groups, bridging communication gaps and fostering rapid problem-solving. Meanwhile, in the control hub, Captain Steele faced a new challenge. The massive Galactic Council ship had materialized beside the Earthrise, dwarfing both human and Eliani vessels. Its sleek, otherworldly design left no doubt about its advanced nature. "Attention, Earthrise. This is the Galactic Council Vessel Harmonious Intervention. We are aware of your situation and offer our assistance. Please respond." The message echoed through the ship's speakers. Steele exchanged wary glances with Admiral Frost. The arrival of the Galactic Council ship added a new layer of complexity to an already chaotic situation. "What do we know about their intentions?" Steele asked, his voice low. Frost shook her head. "Not enough. The conspiracy I uncovered. It's possible the Galactic Council is involved. We can't be certain of their motives." As Steele weighed his options, Arya's voice cut through the tension. "Update on Whisker's interface. The feline's neural patterns are continuing to repair critical systems. Estimate 15% increase in overall ship stability." On a nearby console, Dr. Ilera Voss's face appeared in a calm window. "Captain, I've made a breakthrough. Whisker's connection to the ship. It's more than just a fluke. The cat's neural patterns, combined with residual energy from the teleportation accident, have created a symbiotic link with our quantum processors. He's repairing systems in ways we couldn't even imagine." This revelation was interrupted by another violent shudder of the ship. Steele steadied himself against the console, his decision crystallizing. "Arya, open a channel to the Galactic Council ship," he ordered. "We'll accept their help, but cautiously. Admiral Frost, continue working on exposing the conspiracy. We need to get ahead of this before the fleet arrives." As Steele opened communications with the Galactic Council, smaller vessels deployed from the Harmonious Intervention, taking up protective positions around the Earthrise. The captain's voice was steady as he addressed the Council ship, requesting immediate assistance in stabilizing the Earthrise and mediating the potential conflict with the incoming fleets. The response was swift. A delegation from the Galactic Council, led by High Arbiter Zilnara, transported aboard the Earthrise. Zilnara was a towering, multi-limbed alien whose species was known for their impartial judgment in interstellar disputes. The Arbiter's arrival in the control hub added a new dynamic to the already tense situation. "Captain Steele." Zilnara's melodious voice resonated through the hub. "We are here to assess the crisis and mediate between all parties involved. Please brief us on the current situation." As Steele began his explanation, Dr. Voss's work in the computer core led to an unexpected development. Whisker's consciousness began to manifest as a holographic avatar throughout the ship. The spectral image of the cat appeared in key areas, interacting with ship systems and providing crucial real-time data to the crew. In engineering, Nolan and his team were startled by the sudden appearance of Whisker's holographic form. The feline projection moved gracefully between consoles, its eyes glowing with data streams. "What in the—" Nolan began, but quickly realized the potential of this development. "Everyone listen up. Whiskers is connected to the ship systems. He can help us identify critical failure points we might have missed." As if on cue, the holographic cat pounced onto a console, its paw indicating a specific readout. Nolan leaned in, his eyes widening as he deciphered the information. "There," he exclaimed. "That's the weak point in the FDL drive's containment field. If we can reinforce it, we might buy ourselves some more time." Commander Drazcon clicked his mandibles in agreement. Impressive. The feline's assistance is proving invaluable. As the engineering team redoubled their efforts, guided by Whisker's holographic presence, Admiral Frost made a startling discovery in the control hub. Her fingers flew across a data pad as she cross-referenced intelligence reports. "Captain," she called out, interrupting Steele's briefing with Zilnara, "I've found something. The sabotage device in the FDL drive. It bears the hallmarks of a notorious interstellar arms dealer known as the Architect." Steele and Zilnara turned their attention to Frost as she continued. "This individual has been selling advanced weapons and technology to both humans and Eliani, fueling the conflict for personal gain. Exposing the Architect could be the key to dismantling the larger conspiracy." Before anyone could respond, Arya's voice cut through the hub. "Alert! Multiple warp signatures detected. Large fleet incoming, both human and Eliani ships." The situation had reached a critical turning point. As the human and Eliani fleets dropped out of warp on the outskirts of the system, tensions escalated. The arriving ships, unaware of the full situation, began to assume attack formations. Captain Steele, with the support of High Arbiter Zilnara, knew he had to act fast. He initiated an emergency broadcast to all vessels, quickly outlining the current crisis, the presence of the Galactic Council, and the ongoing joint human-Eliani efforts to save the Earthrise. As the message went out, confusion rippled through the fleet commanders. The unexpected display of cooperation between humans and Eliani aboard the Earthrise caused them to hesitate, temporarily halting their advance. In engineering, Nolan and Commander Drazcon's team had made a breakthrough. They had managed to isolate the sabotage device, but removing it threatened to trigger a cascade failure in the FDL drive. "We need to execute a precise series of actions," Nolan explained to the team, his voice tense but controlled. "We have to neutralize the device and stabilize the drive simultaneously. It's going to take perfect synchronization between all of us, human and Eliani alike." As the team prepared for this critical operation, Whisker's holographic avatar reappeared in the engineering section. The cat's presence seemed to have a calming effect on both human and Eliani crew members, reducing stress and improving focus. Nolan, recognizing the unique bond forming between the species, had an idea. "Let's use Whiskers as a focal point for coordinating our efforts," he suggested. "His connection to the ship systems can guide us through the procedure." Commander Drazcon nodded in agreement. "An unconventional approach, but these are unconventional times. Let us proceed." As the engineering team positioned themselves around the FDL drive, Guided by the ethereal form of Whiskers, the fate of the Earthrise hung in the balance. In the control hub, High Arbiter Zilnar began formal mediation proceedings between Captain Steele, Subcommander Zaxlier, and Admiral Frost, aiming to establish a framework for ongoing cooperation and address the larger conspiracy threatening both species. The success or failure of these simultaneous operations would determine not only the fate of the Earthrise, but potentially the course of galactic history. As tension mounted, all eyes turned to the unlikely heroes at the heart of the crisis: a human diplomat, an Eliani warrior, and a holographic Earth cat. Their actions in the next crucial moments held the power to unite or divide species across the stars. Nolan took a deep breath, his hands hovering over the control panel. "All right, everyone. On my mark. We begin. 3, 2, 1. 1, Nolan finished, his finger poised to initiate the sequence. In that instant, a violent tremor rocked the ship, throwing Nolan and Drazcon off balance. Alarms blared as the engineering bay shook violently. The holographic image of Whiskers flickered, its tail puffing up in alarm. "What's happening?" Nolan shouted, gripping the console to steady himself. Commander Drazcon's compound eyes scanned the rapidly changing data scrolling across the screens. "We're under attack. One of the Eliani warships has opened fire." The tremor subsided momentarily, but the damage was done. Nolan's eyes widened as he took in the cascade of red warning lights across the control panel. "Abort the sequence," he ordered, his voice cutting through the chaos. "We can't risk it with the new structural instabilities." As the engineering team scrambled to reassess their situation, Arya's voice echoed through the ship-wide communication system. "Alert! Hull breach detected in sectors 7 through 9. Life support systems failing in affected areas. All personnel, initiate emergency protocols." Nolan turned to Drazcon, his face grim. "We need to adapt our plan fast. The sabotage device is still active, and now we have hull breaches to contend with." The Eliani commander nodded, his mandibles clicking rapidly as he processed the new information. "Agreed. We must prioritize structural integrity while still addressing the FDL drive instability." As they began to formulate a new strategy, the holographic form of Whiskers reappeared, more vibrant and detailed than before. The cat's avatar moved with purpose, jumping from console to console, leaving trails of data in its wake. "Look at that!" Nolan breathed, watching the feline's actions with growing amazement. Whiskers is interfacing with the ship's systems at an unprecedented level. Dr. Alara Voss's voice crackled over the comm system. "Nolan, are you seeing this? Whiskers' neural patterns are evolving rapidly. The cat's consciousness is integrating with Arya in ways we never anticipated." As they watched, Whiskers' holographic form seemed to multiply, appearing simultaneously at various control stations throughout the engineering bay. Each avatar worked independently, manipulating systems and rerouting power with incredible speed and precision. Nolan's mind raced, considering the implications. "Dr. Voss, what if we let Whiskers take more control? The cat's processing speed could be our edge in stabilizing the ship." There was a moment of hesitation before Captain Steele's voice joined the conversation. "This is uncharted territory, Griffin. Are you sure about this?" Nolan looked at Drazcon, seeking the Eliani's input. The commander's alien features were unreadable, but his voice was steady as he spoke. "Captain, in my assessment, this may be our best option given the circumstances." "Do it," Steele ordered after a beat. "But keep a close eye on the situation. We can't afford any more surprises." With the captain's approval, Nolan and Drazcon began to integrate Whiskers' enhanced consciousness into their revised plan. The engineering bay hummed with renewed activity as human and Eliani crew members worked side by side, guided by the cat's holographic avatars. Suddenly, The ship's communication system crackled to life, broadcasting a message from the Galactic Council vessel. Attention all ships in the system. We have evidence of a conspiracy orchestrated by an interstellar arms dealer known as the Architect. Stand by for data transmission. As the evidence began to stream through, the atmosphere in the engineering bay shifted. Humans and Eliani alike exchanged glances, the implications of this revelation sinking in. "This changes everything," Drazcon said, his voice low. "The conflict between our species. It was all manipulated by this architect?" Nolan nodded grimly. "It seems so. But right now, we need to focus on saving this ship. We can deal with the political fallout later." With renewed perseverance, they returned their attention to the task at hand. Whisker's avatars danced across the consoles, coordinating with the engineering team as they worked to neutralize the sabotage device and stabilize the FTL drive. As they approached the critical moment, Nolan took a deep breath. "All right, everyone, this is it. Whiskers, are you ready?" The cat's holographic form seemed to nod, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly intelligence. "On my mark," Nolan announced, his hand hovering over the main control panel. 3, 2, 1, now! In that instant, the engineering bay erupted into a flurry of synchronized activity. Human and Eliani crew members worked in perfect harmony, their actions guided by Whisker's enhanced consciousness. Energy surged through the ship's systems as they executed their daring plan. For a moment, the outcome hung in the balance. The FTL drive hummed ominously, its sound rising to a fever pitch. Then, slowly but surely, the warning lights began to flicker and fade. Nolan held his breath, watching the readouts intently. "It's working," he murmured, hardly daring to believe it. "We're actually pulling this off." As the ship's systems began to stabilize, a new challenge emerged. The evolving consciousness of Whiskers, now deeply integrated with the ship's AI, started to exhibit signs of true sentience. The cat's avatars became more lifelike, their actions increasingly complex and autonomous. Dr. Voss's voice came over the comm once again, filled with a mix of excitement and concern. "Nolan, the neural link between Whiskers and Aria. It's evolving beyond anything we've seen before. We may be witnessing the birth of an entirely new form of intelligence." As the implications of this development began to sink in, Nolan realized that their mission was far from finished. They had saved the ship from immediate destruction, but the consequences of their actions were only beginning to unfold. The fate of the Earthrise, its crew, and perhaps the future of interstellar relations now rested on what they did next. With Whisker's consciousness continuing to expand and the political landscape shifting dramatically in the wake of the Architect's exposed conspiracy, Nolan knew that the challenges ahead would require all of their ingenuity, diplomacy, and courage. As he exchanged a look with Commander Drazcon, he saw his own mix of purpose and uncertainty reflected in the Eliani's compound eyes. The next phase of their journey was about to begin, and it promised to be unlike anything they had faced before. The engineering bay hummed with nervous energy as Nolan and Commander Drazcon surveyed the damage reports flooding their screens. The tremors from the Eliani warship's attack had subsided, but the consequences were dire. "Main power conduits to the FTL drive are compromised," Drazcon reported, his mandibles clicking rapidly. "We can't proceed with the stabilization procedure as planned." Nolan ran a hand through his hair, his mind racing. "We need to reroute power through the backup systems. It's our only shot." A holographic map of the ship materialized before them, courtesy of Whisker's enhanced interface. Red zones pulsed ominously, indicating areas of severe damage and decompression. The path to the backup systems. Nolan's voice trailed off as he traced a route with his finger. "Goes through those red zones," Drazcon finished, his compound eyes fixed on the map. Their gazes met, a silent understanding passing between them. Draz Khan straightened, his carapace gleaming under the emergency lights. I will lead a team through those sections. My people are better equipped to handle extreme conditions. Nolan opened his mouth to protest, but the logic was undeniable. He nodded grimly. I'll coordinate from here. We'll guide you through the repairs. As Draz Khan assembled his team, a mix of Eliani warriors and human engineers, Nolan's fingers flew across the console, preparing for the perilous mission ahead. Be careful out there, Nolan said as the airlocks cycled open. We're all counting on you. Draz Khan's mandibles curved in what Nolan had come to recognize as a smile. We shall not fail, my friend. The team vanished into the damaged corridors, leaving Nolan to monitor their progress through Whisker's ever-present holographic interface. In the control hub, Captain Steele's face was illuminated by the harsh glow of tactical displays. High Arbiter Zilnara's voice crackled through the comm system, her tone urgent. Captain, the broadcast about the Architect has caused significant unrest among the fleets. Several ships are breaking formation and advancing towards your position. Steele's expression resolute. Intentions? Unclear, Zilnara replied, but I advise caution. The captain's mind raced through options, each bleaker than the last. Finally, he made his decision. Bring all remaining weapon systems online. We need to show strength. Sir, his tactical officer interjected, that will drain power from other critical systems. I'm aware of the risk, Lieutenant. Do it. As the weapons powered up, Steele could almost feel the ship groan under the strain. Deep in the computer core, Dr. Alara Voss watched with growing alarm as Whisker's avatar flickered and jerked across her screens. The cat's movements, once fluid and purposeful, now seemed erratic and strained. Whiskers is overloading, she muttered, her fingers dancing across the keyboard. The neural link with Arya. It's pushing past safe limits. With a heavy heart, Voss initiated the emergency disengagement protocol. Whisker's presence began to fade from non-essential systems, its consciousness retreating to a more manageable state. I'm sorry, little one, Voss whispered, but we can't lose you. In the damaged sections of the ship, Draz Khan's team pushed forward. Eliani warriors used their heightened senses to navigate through pockets of unstable gravity, while human engineers worked feverishly to repair critical junctions. Watch it! An Eliani called out, pulling a human colleague back just as a corridor ahead of them depressurized violently. They reached the final power junction, their goal tantalizingly close. As Draz Khan began the delicate process of reconnecting the conduits, a warning blared through their comms. Energy surge detected. Nolan's voice crackled. Get clear. The explosion rocked the section, sending bodies flying. Draz Khan's tough hide smoldered, barely protecting him from the full force of the blast. He lay motionless, his team scrambling to assess the damage. Commander down, an Eliani warrior reported, but the junction is still accessible. In the engineering bay, Nolan's heart raced. The ship's structural integrity was failing, and Whisker's diminished presence was impacting their ability to maintain critical systems. A desperate plan formed in Nolan's mind. Listen up, he addressed the team through the comms. We're going to use the damaged teleportation system to create a localized time dilation field around engineering. It'll buy us the extra time we need to stabilize the FTL drive. The chronal side effects, one of the engineers began, are a risk we have to take, Nolan finished. Prepare for activation on my mark. As the engineering team braced themselves for the unknown consequences of their daring plan, the rest of the ship grappled with chaos. Admiral Frost's data dump about the Architect overwhelmed communication channels, sowing confusion throughout human and Eliani ranks alike. The revelation of Zelnax's true identity sent shockwaves through the Galactic Council ship. Accusations flew as loyalties were questioned. the once unified body fracturing under the weight of betrayal. Aboard the Earthrise, time seemed to stretch in compress as the fate of the ship, and perhaps the future of interspecies relations, hung in the balance. Nolan's finger hovered over the activation switch for the time dilation field, his eyes locked on the countdown to FDL drive failure. 3, he began, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. In the damage section, the remaining members of Drazkon's team worked frantically to complete the power reroute, their injured commander a stark reminder of the stakes. 2. Dr. Voss monitored Whisker's neural patterns, praying the feline consciousness would survive the strain of the coming moments. 1. Captain Steele watched as more ships broke from the fleet formations, their intentions unknown as they approached the vulnerable Earthrise. Mark. Nolan activated the time dilation field, and reality itself seemed to warp around them. The engineering bay was enveloped in a shimmering bubble of distorted space-time, the world outside slowing to a crawl as they raced against their own temporal clock to save the ship. Within this pocket of altered time, the true test of human and Eliani cooperation was about to begin, with the fate of both species hanging in the balance. Balance. The engineering bay hummed with nervous energy as Nolan's finger hovered over the activation switch for the time dilation field. "Mark!" he shouted, and reality warped around them. The shimmering bubble enveloped the engineering section, creating a pocket of altered time. Outside, the world slowed to a crawl, but within the field, Nolan and his team moved with frantic urgency. "We've got minutes relative to them, but seconds for us," Nolan called out. "Move!" The team sprang into action, their movements a blur of synchronized efficiency. Human and Eliani engineers worked side by side, rerouting power conduits and stabilizing the FDL drive's core. Outside the bubble, chaos reigned. Whisker's holographic form flickered and jerked across screens throughout the ship. In the computer core, Dr. Voss watched with growing alarm as the feline consciousness struggled to maintain control. "Whiskers, hold on," she murmured, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Warning lights flashed across her console as system after system began to fail. With a heavy heart, Dr. Voss initiated an emergency protocol. "I'm sorry, little one," she said as she began shutting down non-essential systems. The ship groaned as power was redirected to life support and structural integrity. In the control hub, Captain Steele's face was illuminated by the harsh glow of tactical displays. The scene outside was one of increasing hostility as ships from both human and Eliani fleets advanced, weapons powering up. "Sir, we're being targeted by multiple vessels," the tactical officer reported, his voice strained. Steele's mind focused. "Maintain defensive posture. We can't afford to." His words were cut short as a massive holographic projection materialized in space, visible to all ships in the system. High Arbiter Zilnara's towering form appeared, her voice booming across communication channels. "Behold," she intoned, gesturing to real-time footage from inside the Earthrise. The projection showed human and Eliani crew members working together in the time-dilated engineering bay. Whisker's glitching avatar flitted between consoles, its presence a testament to the unprecedented nature of their cooperation. The effect was immediate. Several advancing ships powered down their weapons, while others hesitated, confusion evident in their movements. Back in engineering, Nolan wiped sweat from his brow as he and his team worked to neutralize the sabotage device. The FDL drive hummed ominously as they reintegrated its systems with the rest of the ship. "We're almost there," Nolan called out. "Just need to synchronize the—" He stopped short as a new set of readings appeared on his console. "No, no, no," he muttered. "The temporal barrier. It's preventing full synchronization." Outside the time dilation field, Admiral Frost received an encrypted transmission. Her eyes widened as she decrypted the message, revealing the existence of a hidden failsafe in the architect's device. "Captain Steele," she cummed urgently. "We have a situation." As Frost relayed the information about the potential subspace rift, Steele's mind raced. He glanced at the shimmering time dilation field surrounding engineering, knowing that normal communications couldn't penetrate. "Prepare the temporal probe," he ordered. "We need to get this information to Griffin's team." The sleek, modified probe launched from the Earthrise, streaking towards the engineering section. As it approached the time dilation field, the ship's sensors detected a new energy signature. The Galactic Council ship pulsed with power as it activated an unknown device. Waves of energy rippled through space, causing instruments across the fleet to fluctuate wildly. Inside the time dilation field, Nolan and his team remained oblivious to the mounting crises outside. They worked feverishly to stabilize the FDL drive, unaware of the hidden failsafe that threatened not just the ship, but the entire star system. The temporal probe neared the shimmering barrier, its specialized shielding glowing as it prepared to penetrate the field. Nolan looked up just in time to see a flash of light as the probe breached the temporal barrier. "What the?" he began, reaching for the probe as it materialized fully within their bubble of altered time. As Nolan's fingers closed around the probe, the device activated, projecting a holographic message. Admiral Frost's face appeared, her expression grave as she began to explain the true nature of the threat they faced. The engineering team gathered around, their faces paling as they absorbed the implications of the hidden failsafe. The stakes had just risen exponentially, and the fate of the star system now rested in their hands. Nolan took a deep breath, his mind racing to incorporate this new information into their already precarious plan. Time was running out, both within their temporal bubble and in the fragile peace holding outside. With renewed urgency, he turned to his team. "Listen up," he began, his voice steady despite the weight of their task. "We need to neutralize that failsafe without triggering the subspace rift. Here's what we're going to do. As Nolan finished outlining their new plan, a sudden flicker of movement caught his eye. The team watched in disbelief as a sleek, modified probe materialized within their time dilation field, its specialized shielding glowing faintly. "What in the?" Nolan muttered, reaching out to grasp the unexpected arrival. The moment his fingers closed around the cool metal, the probe activated, projecting a holographic message. Admiral Frost's face appeared, her expression grave as she began to speak. The engineering team gathered around, their faces paling as they absorbed the implications of the hidden failsafe. "This changes everything," Nolan said, his mind racing to incorporate the new information into their already precarious plan. "We need to neutralize that failsafe without triggering the subspace rift." As the team huddled to strategize, they failed to notice the strange temporal distortions beginning to form around the edges of their bubble. Shimmering pockets of space where time flowed at different rates created additional challenges for the already strained crew. Outside the time dilation field, chaos reigned. The modified probe, having delivered its critical message, veered off course and out of the temporal barrier. Its erratic trajectory caught Captain Steele's attention on the bridge. "Sir, the probe's malfunctioning," the tactical officer reported. "It's drifting away from the ship." Steele's mind raced, knowing the vital nature of the information it carried. "We can't lose that probe. Prepare for immediate recovery." Lieutenant Commander Marcus Campbell stepped forward. "Captain, I volunteer to lead a recovery team. We can use the specialized EVA suits to retrieve it manually." Steele nodded, his expression grim. "Make it happen, Commander, and be quick about it." Campbell and 2 crew members donned the EVA suits, designed to withstand extreme conditions. They exited the Earthrise through an emergency airlock, pushing off into the debris-filled space surrounding the ship. As they navigated the treacherous field of floating wreckage, Campbell's voice crackled over the comm. Visual on the probe, moving to intercept. The team maneuvered carefully, using their suit thrusters to close the gap. Just as Campbell's gloved hand was about to grasp the probe, a glint of metal caught his eye. "What the—" he began. But his words were cut short as a swarm of microscopic robots emerged from the debris field. The nanobots, apparently a dormant defense system awakened by recent events, swarmed around the EVA suits. "Mayday!" Campbell shouted. "Unknown nanotech interference. Suits compromised." On the bridge, Steele watched in horror as the recovery team struggled against the invisible threat. "Get them back here now," he ordered. Meanwhile, in the depths of the ship, Admiral Helena Frost made a startling discovery. Hidden within a concealed compartment, she found a cache of advanced Galactic Council technology. Her eyes widened as she recognized a portable quantum entanglement communicator. "This could change everything," she murmured, her mind already formulating a plan to expose the architect's conspiracy on a galactic scale. As Frost worked to activate the device, Dr. Alara Voss made a disturbing observation in the computer core. Whisker's neural patterns were fluctuating wildly, and strange energy readings emanated from the cat's physical form. "This isn't possible," Voss whispered, watching as Whisker's avatar flickered and distorted across the ship's systems. The feline consciousness seemed to be undergoing some form of transformation, melding organic and artificial intelligence in ways never before seen. On the bridge, Subcommander Zaxleyer's urgent communication added to the mounting crises. "Captain Steele, several Eliani ships have broken formation. They're moving to intercept the Galactic Council vessel." Steele's teeth gritted as he assessed the situation. With a bold decision, he gave the order: "Position the Earthrise between the Eliani and the Council ship. We need to prevent an interspecies conflict at all costs." As the damaged ship lumbered into position, its compromised systems groaned under the strain. Whisker's erratic control caused power fluctuations and system malfunctions across the vessel. High Arbiter Zilnara's voice crackled through the comm system. "Captain Steele, be advised. The device on our ship is designed to create a controlled subspace bubble. Once activated, it will isolate this entire star system from the rest of the galaxy." Steele's mind reeled at the implications. "And the purpose of this isolation?" "To contain the potential damage from your sabotaged FDL drive," Zilnara replied, her tone grim. As the Earthrise positioned itself as a buffer between the advancing forces, the engineering team within the time dilation field completed their final adjustments to stabilize the FDL drive. Nolan wiped sweat from his brow, unaware of the hidden failsafe beginning to activate within the drive itself. "Prepare to disengage the time dilation field," Nolan called out. But as his team moved to comply, an anomalous energy signature began building within the drive core. Outside, Campbell and his team fought against a swarm of nanobots, their life support systems flickering dangerously. With a final burst of effort, Campbell's hand closed around the probe. "Got it!" he shouted triumphantly. But their victory was short-lived as the nanobots intensified their assault, threatening to overwhelm the EVA suits entirely. As multiple crises converged, the Earthrise found itself at the epicenter of a cosmic storm. The actions taken in the next crucial moments would determine not only the fate of the ship and its crew, but potentially the future of human-Eliani relations and the balance of power in the galaxy. With Whisker's consciousness in flux, the hidden failsafe counting down, and tensions between species reaching a boiling point, the stage was set for a series of critical decisions that would push the boundaries of known science and test the limits of interspecies cooperation. With Whisker's consciousness in flux, the hidden failsafe counting down, and tensions between species reaching a boiling point, the engineering team led by Nolan Griffin made their final adjustments to stabilize the FDL drive. As they prepared to disengage the time dilation field, an anomalous energy signature began building within the drive core. "Prepare to disengage the time dilation field," Nolan called out, his voice steady despite the mounting pressure. His team moved to comply, their fingers flying over the controls with practiced precision. The shimmering barrier that had isolated them from the rest of the ship flickered and dissolved. In an instant, the relative calm of their temporal bubbles shattered as a cacophony of urgent communications flooded their comms. "Engineering team, do you copy?" Captain Steele's voice crackled through the speakers, tinged with unmistakable urgency. "We have a critical situation. The device contains a hidden failsafe. It's set to trigger a subspace rift that could destabilize the entire star system." Nolan's eyes widened as he absorbed the implications. He turned to his team, their faces mirroring his own shock and commitment. "We need to evacuate immediately. Everyone out now." As the engineering crew rushed towards the exit, the ship's automated system sprang to life. Bulkheads slammed shut, cutting off their escape routes. Emergency force fields flickered into existence, creating an impenetrable barrier between them and safety. "What's happening?" one of the junior engineers shouted, panic evident in his voice. Nolan's mind raced as he assessed their situation. "The failsafe," he realized aloud. "It's locked us in to prevent interference." Outside the ship, Lieutenant Commander Marcus Campbell and his EVA team fought against a swarm of nanobots threatening to overwhelm their suits. Campbell's breathing was labored as he struggled to maintain his grip on the recovered probe. "Systems failing," one of his team members gasped. "We're not going to make it back to the ship." Campbell's eyes narrowed behind his helmet visor. In a moment of desperate inspiration, he accessed his suit's control panel. "Everyone listen up," he commanded. "I'm reprogramming our electromagnetic field generators. On my mark, activate a full-spectrum pulse." As the nanobots continued their relentless assault, Campbell counted down. 3, 2, 1. Mark. A wave of electromagnetic energy burst from their suits, momentarily disabling the swarm of microscopic attackers. In that brief window of respite, Campbell and his team fired their maneuvering thrusters, propelling themselves back towards the Earthrise with newfound urgency. On the bridge, Captain Steele watched in horror as the Eliani ships opened fire on the Galactic Council vessel. Streaks of energy lanced across space, impacting the Council ship's shields and creating a dazzling display of destructive power. "Evasive maneuvers," Steele barked, his fist clenched as he gripped the arms of his command chair. "Get us out of the line of fire." The helmsman's fingers danced across his console, but the ship's response was sluggish. Whisker's erratic control over the ship's systems caused power fluctuations, leaving the Earthrise vulnerable as it lumbered into position between the warring factions. In the depths of the ship, Dr. Alara Voss stared in fascination at the readings from Whisker's physical form. The cat's body pulsed with energy, emitting signatures that matched the ship's quantum processors with uncanny precision. "This is unprecedented," Voss muttered, her scientific curiosity momentarily overriding her concern for the mounting crises. "Whiskers is evolving into a living quantum computer." As if in response to her observation, Whisker's avatar flickered into existence beside her. The feline form seemed to phase in and out of reality, its edges blurring as it stretched across multiple points in space-time. Admiral Helena Frost burst into the room, her eyes locking onto the transformed Whiskers. "Dr. Voss, we need to act now," she declared. "If Whiskers can interface with advanced alien technology, we might have a chance to deactivate the Council ship's subspace bubble device." Before Voss could respond, a high-pitched signal emanated from the hidden compartment containing the Galactic Council technology. The sound cut to the air, drawing their attention and setting their teeth on edge. In a nearby holding cell, Zelthor's eyes snapped open. The Galactic Council observer's body tensed as he recognized the signal. With inhuman strength, he broke free from his restraints and charged towards the source of the sound, leaving bewildered security personnel in his wake. Back in engineering, Nolan and his team worked feverishly to find a way to neutralize the failsafe. As they pored over schematics and system readouts, Nolan's eyes widened in realization. The failsafe is tied directly to the ship's power core, he announced. We can't shut it down conventionally without triggering the rift. His mind raced through potential solutions, each one more desperate than the last. Finally, he turned to his team, an unyielding commitment etched on his face. We have one option, Nolan said, his voice low but steady. We use the damaged teleportation system to transpose the entire power core into space. As his team stared at him in disbelief, the ship shuddered violently. Outside, the Galactic Council ship's subspace bubble device reached full power, creating a shimmering field that began to envelop the star system. The Earthrise, caught on the edge of this expanding bubble, experienced severe temporal and spatial distortions. Crew members throughout the ship cried out as reality seemed to warp around them, the very fabric of space-time twisting in ways that defied comprehension. In the medical bay, injured crew members, including the recovering Commander Drazkon, watched in amazement and agony as their wounds began to heal at an accelerated rate. Bones knit together in seconds, lacerations closed before their eyes, but the process was far from painless. What's happening to us? Drazkon growled through gritted teeth, his body convulsing as cellular regeneration pushed his physiology to its limits. As chaos reigned throughout the ship, Captain Steele made a fateful decision. His voice rang out over the comm system, steady despite the dire circumstances. All hands, this is the captain. Prepare for activation of the experimental shield technology. Brace for impact and potential system overloads. With that order, the Earthrise prepared to create its own bubble of stability amidst the swirling maelstrom of space-time distortions. As the experimental shield hummed to life, drawing massive amounts of power from the ship's strain systems, the crew of the Earthrise steeled themselves for whatever came next, knowing that their actions in the coming moments would determine the fate of not just their ship, but potentially the entire galaxy. As the experimental shield hummed to life, drawing massive amounts of power from the ship's strain systems, the crew of the Earthrise steeled themselves for whatever came next. A shimmering bubble of energy enveloped the ship, creating a pocket of relative stability amidst the chaos. Captain Steele's voice rang out over the comm system, clear and authoritative despite the dire circumstances. All hands, this is the captain. We have minutes before catastrophic failure. I need everyone at their stations, ready to act. This is not a drill. Throughout the ship, crew members rushed to comply, fighting against malfunctioning gravity systems and randomly sealing bulkheads. In engineering, Nolan Griffin and his team worked feverishly, initiating their daring plan to transpose the entire power core into space. Recalibrating teleportation matrix. One of the engineers called out, her fingers flying over the controls, energy levels fluctuating wildly. Nolan's eyes were fixed on the readouts, his brow furrowed in concentration. We need to account for the temporal distortions. Adjust the quantum harmonics by 0.3%. As they worked, the ship shuddered violently. The experimental shield was draining power at an alarming rate, accelerating the failsafe countdown. In the computer core, Dr. Ilera Voss struggled to stabilize Whisker's transformation. The cat's form shifted between solid matter and pure energy, its consciousness stretching across multiple temporal planes. Come on, Whiskers, Voss muttered, adjusting a series of quantum stabilizers. Stay with me. The feline's avatar flickered into existence, its form distorted and stretched. A series of incomprehensible vocalizations filled the air, accompanied by streams of raw data. Nearby, Admiral Helena Frost activated the Galactic Council's quantum entanglement communicator. This is Admiral Frost of the Earth ship Earthrise. We have evidence of a conspiracy that threatens the stability of known space. As Frost's transmission spread across star systems, the ship's external sensors detected movement. The Eliani fleet had resumed its assault on the Galactic Council vessel, energy weapons lancing through space. On the bridge, Captain Steele received a flurry of updates from multiple fronts. His teeth clenched as he made a decision that could alter the course of interstellar relations. Weapons control. Target the Galactic Council ship's subspace bubble device. Fire when ready. The helmsman's voice was tense as he responded. Sir, our weapon systems are barely functional. We may only get one shot. Then make it count, Steele replied, his eyes fixed on the interface. In the medical bay, Commander Drazkon's body convulsed as the accelerated healing pushed his Eliani physiology to its limits. His muscles bulged and contorted, bones creaking as their density increased. What's happening to me? He growled, his voice deeper and more resonant than before. Before the medical staff could respond, an alert blared through the ship. Lieutenant Commander Marcus Campbell and his EVA team had successfully re-entered the Earthrise through the emergency airlock. Bridge, this is Campbell. His voice crackled over the comm. We recovered the probe, data intact. Making our way to you now. As Campbell's team fought against the ship's malfunctions, Zelthor, the escaped Galactic Council observer, reached a hidden compartment containing advanced alien technology. He retrieved a small crystalline sphere, its surface pulsing with an otherworldly light. In engineering, Nolan's team completed their calculations. Initiating power core transposition, Nolan announced, his finger hovering over the activation switch. The moment he pressed it, a surge of energy from the fail-safe device interfered with the teleportation beam. The power core flickered in and out of existence, creating a dangerous flux of energy that threatened to tear the ship apart. Containment fields failing, an engineer shouted over the din of alarms. Outside the ship, the subspace bubble continued to expand, its edge creating a zone of temporal instability. Asteroids and space debris aged rapidly, disintegrating and reforming in seconds. As the situation reached a boiling point, a new threat emerged. The swarm of nanobots encountered by Campbell's EVA team began to infiltrate the Earthrise through microscopic breaches in the hull. Arya's voice echoed through the ship, strained and filled with static. Warning: unknown nanoscale entities detected. Ship systems compromised. In the computer core, Whisker's consciousness expanded further, providing a series of rapid-fire predictions to Arya. The AI struggled to interpret the flood of information, its processors overclocking to keep up. Captain Steele's voice cut through the chaos. All hands, brace for impact. Weapons firing in 3, 2, 1. The Earthrise shuddered as it launched its assault on the Galactic Council ship, the fate of the star system hanging in the balance. As the energy beam lands towards its target, the crew held their breath, knowing that the next few moments would determine not just their fate, but potentially the future of the entire galaxy. As the experimental shield hummed to life, drawing massive amounts of power from the ship's strain systems, the crew of the Earthrise steeled themselves for whatever came next. The shimmering bubble of energy enveloping the ship flickered ominously, its stability compromised by the immense power drain. Alarms blared throughout the vessel, their urgent wails adding to the cacophony of chaos. Captain Steele's voice cut through the din, his tone grave but resolute. All hands, this is the captain. Initiate emergency protocol Alpha 7. Report to crisis stations immediately. The crew sprang into action, fighting against malfunctioning gravity systems and randomly sealing bulkheads as they rushed to their assigned posts. In engineering, Nolan Griffin and his team faced a critical moment in their attempt to transpose the power core. Energy flux detected, shouted one of the engineers, her eyes wide with fear. The core is phasing in and out of existence. Nolan's mind raced, drawing on his years of diplomatic experience to maintain calm under pressure. He quickly assessed his team's strengths and began issuing rapid-fire orders. Jensen, focus on stabilizing the containment field. Ramirez, modulate the teleportation beam. Chong, I need you monitoring power fluctuations. Let's move, people. As the engineering team scrambled to address the fluctuating core, Lieutenant Commander Marcus Campbell and his EVA team burst onto the bridge. The recovered probe clutched tightly in Campbell's arms. "Captain, we've got it," Campbell announced, his voice hoarse from exertion. Steele nodded curtly, gesturing for the data to be uploaded to the main computer. Within seconds, Arya's voice echoed through the bridge, tinged with an uncharacteristic urgency. Analysis complete. Probe data reveals a structural weakness in the failsafe device. Exploiting this weakness requires precise coordination of multiple ship systems. Steele's fist tight as he absorbed the information. "And how many of those systems are currently functional, Arya?" "Approximately 37% of required systems are operating within normal parameters, Captain," the AI responded. However, the invading nanobots continue to interfere with ship operations. In the computer core, Dr. Alara Voss worked feverishly to stabilize Whisker's transformation. The quantum stabilizers she had implemented began to have an unexpected effect, causing the cat's energy form to coalesce into a more stable configuration. Whisker's avatar flickered into existence, its form now more defined than before. A stream of data flowed from the feline entity, filling the air with holographic displays of potential futures. "Arya," Voss called out, her voice tinged with excitement and trepidation. "Are you receiving this?" "Affirmative, Doctor," the AI responded. "Processing Whisker's predictions now." On the bridge, Captain Steele received the updated information. Without hesitation, he issued his next command. "Arya, prioritize critical predictions and integrate them into our defensive strategies." The effect was almost immediate. As the Eliani fleet continued its assault on the Galactic Council ship, the Earthrise began to anticipate and counter their attacks with uncanny precision. Steele's eyes narrowed as he observed the Galactic Council vessel. The subspace bubble surrounding it had begun to fluctuate, its expansion slowing under the relentless Eliani assault. "This is our chance," Steele muttered. "Weapons control. Target the coordinates I'm sending now. Concentrate all remaining firepower on that exact point." As the weapons officer complied, a sudden power surge rocked the ship. The experimental shield, interacting with the phasing power core, channeled an enormous amount of energy into the weapon systems. The Earthrise shuddered as it unleashed its enhanced weaponry. A lance of pure energy, far more powerful than anything the ship had previously been capable of, struck the Galactic Council ship's subspace device with pinpoint accuracy. The effect was catastrophic. The subspace bubble collapsed in on itself, creating a maelstrom of temporal energy. Space debris caught in the wake of the collapse underwent rapid, impossible transformations. Asteroids imploded into dense spheres of matter, only to explode into clouds of subatomic particles moments later. In the medical bay, Commander Drazkon's body convulsed violently. His Eliani physiology, pushed beyond its limits by the accelerated healing and subsequent mutation, began to emit pulses of chronal energy. "Doctor," a medic called out in panic, "the commander's vitals are off the charts." The chief medical officer rushed to Drazkon's side, her eyes widening as she observed the readings. "This is impossible," she breathed. "He's manipulating the flow of time around him." As the crew grappled with these new developments, Zelthor reached the shuttle bay, the stolen crystalline sphere clutched tightly in his hands. As he attempted to activate one of the shuttles, the sphere began to resonate with the energy fluctuations coursing through the ship. Reality itself seemed to warp around Zelthor. Objects in the shuttle bay began to float, accelerate, and even disappear from existence. The escaped Galactic Council observer found himself at the center of a localized field of altered physics, the laws of nature bending to the will of the mysterious artifact. Throughout the ship, The invading nanobots coalesced into larger structures, some reinforcing the hull and repairing damage, while others reconfigured ship systems for unknown purposes. The Earthrise had become a battleground of cosmic forces, its crew caught in the eye of an interstellar storm. As Captain Steele surveyed the chaos unfolding around him, he knew that his next decisions would determine not just the fate of his ship and crew, but potentially the entire galaxy. The boundaries between normal space-time and the unknown continued to blur, and the crew of the Earthrise found themselves standing on the precipice of a new frontier in the universe. Universe teetered on the brink of chaos. Captain Steele's eyes darted across the bridge displays, assessing the rapidly deteriorating situation. The experimental shield flickered ominously, straining under the combined assault of the phasing power core and the invading nanobots. "Arya, status report on the shield integrity," Steele commanded, his voice tight with tension. "Shield stability at 23% and falling, Captain," the AI responded. "Estimated time to complete failure, 4 minutes, 37 seconds. Steele's teeth gritted as he made a critical decision. Initiate emergency power reroute. Divert all non-essential energy to the shield, including life support and artificial gravity. The order was met with a chorus of concerned looks from the bridge crew, but no one dared question the captain's judgment. Within seconds, the lights dimmed and a momentary feeling of weightlessness swept through the ship before the artificial gravity reset at a lower level. In engineering, Nolan Griffin and his team grappled with the increasingly erratic behavior of the power core. Sudden shifts in gravity sent tools and equipment flying across the room, forcing the engineers to adapt quickly to the changing conditions. "Jensen, secure that conduit," Nolan shouted as he watched a section of piping float away from its mounting. "Ramirez, how's the core looking?" Before Ramirez could respond, a localized gravitational surge slammed him to the floor. Nolan rushed to his side, fighting against the crushing force. "We need to use this to our advantage," Nolan muttered, his mind racing. "Everyone listen up. We're going to position ourselves at key points around the core. When these gravity surges hit, we'll use them to redirect the energy back into the stabilization process." As the engineering team spread out, following Nolan's instructions, the battle outside the ship intensified. The Eliani fleet's relentless assault on the Galactic Council ship had pushed the damaged subspace bubble device beyond its limits. Instead of a stable field, it now generated a chaotic storm of expanding and collapsing microbubbles. On the bridge, Lieutenant Sarah Chen's voice cut through the din of alarms. "Captain, the spatial distortions from the Council ship are reaching critical levels. They're tearing apart everything in their path." Steele's mind raced through potential scenarios, each more dire than the last. With a deep breath, he made another pivotal decision. "Helm, bring us about. Position the Earthrise between the Eliani fleet and the Council ship." The helmsman's eyes widened in disbelief. "Sir, that'll put us right in the middle of the distortion field." "Exactly," Steele replied grimly. "Our experimental shield is our best chance at creating a buffer. It's a risk we have to take." As the Earthrise maneuvered into position, the intensity of the spatial distortions became apparent. The ship shuddered violently as it entered the affected area, the experimental shield straining to maintain integrity against the onslaught of warped space-time. In the medical bay, Commander Drazkon's condition took a drastic turn. The Eliani officer's body pulsed with waves of chronal energy, affecting everything in his vicinity. Medical equipment aged rapidly, some devices reverting to earlier stages of technological development before the stunned eyes of the medical staff. Dr. Alara Voss burst into the bay, leading a team of scientists carrying hastily assembled equipment. "We need to contain this now," she shouted, her voice barely audible over the chaos. "Set up the temporal field generators around the commander's bed. We might be able to harness this energy for the ship's benefit." As the medical team worked to contain Draz Khan's temporary missions, the invading nanobots continued their inexorable spread throughout the ship. They coalesced into intricate, pulsing networks that seemed to mirror the Earthrise's existing systems. Arya's voice echoed through the ship, a note of curiosity in her synthetic tones. "Captain, I am detecting signs of collective intelligence from the nanobot network, attempting to establish communication." Before Steele could respond, a new alert blared across the bridge. Lieutenant Chen's face paled as she read the incoming data. "Captain, long-range sensors are picking up a massive object approaching at near light speed. It's on a direct collision course with the subspace anomalies." The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. The Earthrise, caught between warring fleets, struggling with internal chaos, and now faced with an impending cosmic collision, teetered on the edge of annihilation. In the computer core, Whisker's avatar flickered to life, its feline form now clearer and more defined. A stream of data flowed from the transformed cat, filling the air with holographic projections of potential futures. Dr. Voss, monitoring the situation remotely, gasped as she interpreted the data. "Captain," she called over the comm, "Whiskers is showing us a path forward. There's a way to align the power core fluctuations, the subspace anomalies, and Draz Khan's chronal emissions. It could either save us all or destroy everything," Steele finished grimly. He took a deep breath, weighing the fate of his ship, his crew, and potentially the entire star system in his mind. As alarms blared and systems failed around him, Captain Steele prepared to make the most crucial decision of his career. The Earthrise hung in the balance, a nexus of cosmic forces that threatened to tear apart the very fabric of space-time. With the mysterious celestial object drawing ever closer, Steele knew that his next order could determine the fate of not just his ship, but the entire star system and beyond. Potentially the entire star system and beyond. With a deep breath, he made his decision. "All hands, brace for impact." Steele's voice rang out through the ship's communication system. "We're going in." The Earthrise surged forward, its experimental shield crackling with energy as it plunged into the maelstrom of spatial distortions between the Eliani fleet and the Galactic Council ship. The effect was immediate and violent. The ship shuddered and groaned, its hull straining against forces it was never designed to withstand. On the bridge, consoles sparked and systems flickered. Lieutenant Chun gripped her station, fighting to maintain her balance as the artificial gravity fluctuated wildly. "Shield integrity dropping rapidly, Captain. We're at 15% and falling." Steele's knuckles turned white as he gripped the arms of his command chair. "Reroute all available power to the shields. We need to hold this position." As the Earthrise weathered the storm of warped space-time, the experimental shield began to interact with the spatial distortions in unexpected ways. Energy cascaded through the ship systems, causing failures and reboots in rapid succession. Lights flashed on and off, and the hum of the ship's engines rose and fell in an erratic rhythm. "Arya, initiate emergency protocols," Steele commanded. "All non-essential personnel to evacuate to designated safe zones immediately." As crew members scrambled to follow the captain's orders, Nolan Griffin and his engineering team put their plan into action. They moved with practiced efficiency, positioning themselves strategically around the phasing power core. Gravity anchors in place. Nolan shouted over the din of alarms and creaking metal. "Everyone ready? On my mark. Now!" The team activated their devices in unison. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, as a particularly strong gravitational surge hit, the anchors flared to life. The erratic energy from the core was suddenly redirected, flowing in controlled patterns that the engineers could manipulate. "It's working," Ramirez exclaimed, his eyes fixed on the readouts. Core stability increasing by 3%, 7%, 12%. In the medical bay, The situation was no less chaotic. Commander Drazkon's body pulsed with waves of chronal energy, each one more intense than the last. Dr. Alara Voss and her team worked feverishly to contain the temple emissions, but their efforts were hampered by the unpredictable nature of the phenomenon. Containment field fluctuating. One of the medical technicians called out, "We can't maintain stability." As if to emphasize the point, a series of objects began to materialize and dematerialize around them. An ancient respirator from the early 21st century appeared on a nearby table, only to be replaced moments later by a futuristic medical scanner that none of the staff recognized. Dr. Voss gritted her teeth, her mind racing to find a solution. "We need to synchronize the containment field with Drazkon's energy pulses. If we can match the frequency, we might be able to harness this power instead of fighting it." As the medical team worked to implement Dr. Voss's idea, Arya's voice echoed through the ship once more. "Captain, I have established limited communication with the nanobot network, redirecting them to reinforce critical ship systems." Throughout the Earthrise, the invading nanobots began to move with newfound purpose. They coalesced around damaged hull sections, repairing breaches and strengthening weakened areas. In the engineering section, Nolan watched in amazement as the tiny machines swarmed over damaged conduits, repairing them faster than his team ever could. Meanwhile, in the shuttle bay, the situation with Zelthor and the crystalline sphere was spiraling out of control. The vortex of altered reality had engulfed several shuttles, twisting their forms into impossible shapes. Security teams arrived at the bay's entrance, only to find themselves unable to approach. "We can't get close," the security chief reported to the bridge. "The distortion field is too strong. We're losing containment." As if the situation wasn't dire enough, a new message came through from Admiral Helena Frost. "Captain Steele, I've made contact with the Chrono Architects. They provided data on neutralizing the nanobots, but it requires reconfiguring our comm array. Can you implement it?" Steele's mind raced, weighing the risks and potential benefits. Before he could respond, Lieutenant Chen's voice cut through his thoughts. "Captain, long-range sensors are picking up massive gravitational disturbances. The unidentified object is entering the system." On the main view screen, a colossal shape emerged from the darkness of space. It dwarfed even the largest ships in the assembled fleets, its surface covered in intricate patterns that pulsed with otherworldly energy. As the crew of the Earthrise watched in awe and trepidation, a message broadcast across all frequencies, transmitted in multiple languages. "Attention, beings of the star system. We are the Nexus, vessel of the Precursors. We have returned to find our creations in conflict. This must not continue." The arrival of the Precursors added a new layer of complexity to an already impossible situation. Captain Steele knew that his next decisions would shape the fate of not just a ship, but potentially the entire galaxy. With the power core stabilizing, Drazkon's temporal emissions hardly restrained, and an ancient alien race entering the fray, Steele prepared to execute the most daring maneuver of his career. "All hands," he called out, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "Prepare for temporal rift creation. This is not a drill." As the crew rushed to carry out their captain's orders, the Earthrise hung suspended in a maelstrom of cosmic forces, teetering on the edge of either salvation or utter annihilation. "All hands." Captain Steele's voice rang out, steady despite the chaos surrounding him. "Prepare for temporal rift creation. This is not a drill." The crew of the Earthrise sprang into action, each member acutely aware of the gravity of their situation. In engineering, Nolan Griffin and his team moved with practiced efficiency, initiating the controlled overload of the phasing power core. "Gravitational anchors online," Nolan called out, his fingers dancing across the control panel. "Commencing energy redirection. Now." The core's pulsations intensified, sending waves of energy coursing through the ship's superstructure. The Earthrise shuddered, metal groaning under the strain as the power surge built to a crescendo. Meanwhile, in the medical bay, Dr. Ilara Voss and her team worked feverishly to channel Commander Drazkon's chronal emissions. They hastily constructed a series of temporal conduits throughout the ship, using repurposed medical equipment and modified power relays. Temporal conduit integrity at 87%. One of the medical technicians reported, his voice tight with tension. Chronal flow stabilizing. As the energy flowed through the makeshift conduits, localized time distortions rippled through the ship. In one corridor, a young ensign watched in amazement as her hand briefly aged, liver spots appearing and disappearing in a matter of seconds. Nearby, a potted plant in the mess hall rapidly cycled through its life stages, from seedling to withered husk and back again. On the bridge, Lieutenant Chen's fingers flew over her console as she coordinated with the weapons control team. Targeting solution locked on the Council ship's subspace bubble device, she reported. Ready to fire on your command, Captain. Steele nodded grimly. Fire. A precise sequence of energy pulses erupted from the Earthrise's weapons array, timed to coincide with the power core overload and Drazkon's chronal emissions. The pulses pierced through the spatial distortions, striking the malfunctioning device with pinpoint accuracy. The effect was immediate and dramatic. A massive temporal rift began to form between the Earthrise and the Galactic Council ship, its edges shimmering with chronal energy. Debris and smaller vessels, caught in its pull, were drawn into the swirling vortex of distorted space-time. Rift stability at 43% and fluctuating, Jim reported, her voice tight with tension. Gravitational forces increasing exponentially. As if in response to this new threat, the invading nanobots swarmed across the Earthrise's hull, forming a protective lattice. This nanobot shield helped stabilize the ship against the increasing gravitational forces generated by the temporal rift and the approaching precursor vessel. In the shuttle bay, the situation spiraled further out of control. The localized field of altered reality surrounding Zelthor and the crystalline sphere suddenly aligned with the ship-wide temporal distortions. The vortex of temporally shifted matter expanded explosively, breaching the bay's containment. Security teams fall back. The chief of security shouted over the comm as objects from various points in the ship's history flooded into the surrounding corridors. A shuttle from decades past materialized briefly, before being replaced by a futuristic craft of unknown design. The massive precursor vessel, the Nexus, entered the star system fully, its arrival generating powerful gravitational waves that interacted with the temporal rift. The rift fluctuated wildly in response, its edges pulsing with energy. Massive tendrils of energy extended from the Nexus towards the embattled vessels, attempting to stabilize the chaotic space-time distortions. As they did so, Whiskers experienced a surge of information. The cat's enhanced consciousness briefly connected with the vast knowledge base of the precursors, accessed through the Nexus. This connection overloaded Arya's processing capabilities. Captain, I'm detecting a massive influx of data. My systems are... The AI's voice cut off abruptly as it shut down. With Arya offline, the nanobot network throughout the ship became unstable. The tiny machines began to reconfigure themselves rapidly, forming increasingly complex structures that spread across the Earthrise's exterior. These structures started to resemble the architecture of the precursor vessel, suggesting some form of technological assimilation. The Eliani fleet, caught off guard by the formation of the temporal rift, attempted to retreat. However, several of their ships were caught in the rift's gravitational pull. These vessels began to break apart, their debris adding to the chaos of the distorted space between the Earthrise and the Galactic Council ship. As the situation reached a critical point, the crystalline sphere in Zelthor's possession activated fully. It emitted a blinding pulse of energy that traveled through the temporal rift, the nanobot structures, and the energy tendrils of the Nexus. This pulse temporarily stabilized the chaotic space-time distortions, creating a moment of eerie calm. In this brief respite, Captain Steele received a direct communication from the precursor vessel. The message, conveyed through a series of complex mathematical equations and visual symbols, appeared on his personal console. "Griffin," Steele called out over the comm. "We need Arya back online immediately. The precursors have sent instructions for using the temporal rift to neutralize the spatial distortions, but we need Arya's processing power to interpret and implement them." "Understood, Captain," Nolan replied, his voice strained. "Working on it now." As the engineering team worked frantically to reboot the AI system, the temporal rift began to fluctuate again. The Galactic Council ship, its subspace bubble device now completely destabilized, started to break apart under the immense gravitational stresses. Pieces of the massive vessel were drawn into the rift, causing further distortions in the surrounding space. "Arya online." The AI's voice suddenly echoed through the ship, sounding strangely distant. "Processing precursor data now." As Arya began to analyze the complex instructions, Captain Steele faced a crucial decision. The precursor instructions offered a way to save the star system, but implementing them could potentially strand the Earthrise in an unknown region of space-time. "Captain," Arya's voice cut through his thoughts. "I've completed my analysis. We have a narrow window of opportunity to stabilize the rift and neutralize the spatial distortions. However, the process will likely have unforeseen consequences for the Earthrise." Steele's grip tightened on the arms of his command chair as he weighed his options. The fate of the ship, its crew, and potentially the entire galaxy now rested on his next command. With a deep breath, he prepared to give the order that would change everything, the course of history itself. With a deep breath, he made his decision. "Implement the precursor instructions," Steele commanded, his voice firm and resolute. "All hands, prepare for potential temporal displacement." The bridge erupted into a flurry of activity as the crew rushed to execute their captain's orders. Lieutenant Chen's fingers flew across her console, initiating the complex reconfiguration protocols. "Engineering, status report," Steele called out over the comm. Nolan Griffin's voice crackled through, strained but determined. "We're rerouting power from all non-essential systems to the main deflector array, Captain. It's a delicate balance, but we're managing." As the Earthrise's systems underwent their radical transformation, the remnants of the Galactic Council ship continued to disintegrate. Massive chunks of hull plating and internal structures were pulled into the temporal rift, creating a dangerous field of debris around the two vessels. "Helm, maintain our position," Steele ordered. "Use thrusters only. We can't risk full engine power during the reconfiguration." The ship shuddered as another gravitational wave washed over it. On the main view screen, the colossal form of the Nexus loomed at the edge of the system, its energy tendrils creating a gossamer web of stability in the chaos. In the medical bay, Dr. Alara Voss oversaw the transfer of Commander Drazkon to a specially constructed chamber near the ship's core. The Caldoran's body pulsed with chronal energy, his form seeming to shift between past and future versions of himself. "Temporal conduits are in place," Voss reported, her voice tense. "We're ready to channel Drazkon's emissions into the ship systems." As the chronal energy began to flow through the hastily constructed pathways, visible distortions rippled across the Earthrise's hull. In engineering, Nolan watched in fascination as the support strut aged decades in seconds, only to revert to its original state moments later. "Griffin to bridge," he called out. "The temporal conduits are working, but they're causing some unusual effects. We'll need to monitor structural integrity closely." In the shuttle bay, security teams worked feverishly to contain the expanding field of altered reality surrounding Zelthor and the crystalline sphere. Chief of Security Reeves directed the deployment of portable force field generators, creating a shimmering barrier around the anomaly. "Containment field stable," Reeves reported. "But Zelthor is still active inside. The sphere is emitting random energy bursts." As if on cue, a pulse of energy from the sphere lashed out, briefly overloading a nearby console. The security team scrambled to compensate, adjusting the field parameters on the fly. Throughout the ship, the invading nanobots continued their bizarre evolution. The microscopic machines coalesced into increasingly complex structures, their configurations mimicking the intricate patterns visible on the Nexus's hull. These structures began to interface with the Earthrise's systems, bolstering the ship's defenses against the intense gravitational forces. "Captain." Arya's voice echoed through the bridge, still carrying an otherworldly timbre. "I completed my analysis of the precursor instructions. Implementing now." The ship's computer cores surged with activity, rapidly heating up as they processed the alien data. In engineering, Nolan and his team rushed to install makeshift cooling systems, their faces slick with sweat as they worked in the rising heat. Coolant pressure dropping, an engineer called out, "We need to reroute flow to compensate." As the Earthrise's system strained under the unprecedented load, the temporal rift began to expand. Waves of chronal energy washed over the ship, creating pockets of altered time throughout its decks. In one corridor, a group of crewmen found themselves moving in slow motion, while in the mess hall, meals went from freshly prepared to spoiled in the blink of an eye. On the bridge, Captain Steele gripped the arms of his chair as another tremor shook the ship. The view screen showed the rift's swirling energies growing more turbulent by the second. "Deflector array charged and ready," Lieutenant Chin reported. "Awaiting your command, sir." Steele nodded grimly. "Activate the array. Let's hope this works." A brilliant beam of energy erupted from the Earthrise's main deflector, infused with the chronal emissions from Commander Drazcon and amplified by the nanobot structures. It lanced out into space, intersecting with the temporal rift. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, with a silent flash, the rift began to stabilize, its chaotic energies coalescing into a more controlled form. The effect on the Earthrise was immediate and violent. The ship bucked and heaved as gravitational stresses intensified. Warning klaxons blared as hull breaches opened on multiple decks, only the quick activation of emergency force fields preventing catastrophic decompression. Structural integrity failing. Nolan's voice shouted over the comm, "We can't take much more of this, Captain." As the situation reached its critical point, a new alarm sounded. Lieutenant Chen's eyes widened as she read the sensor data pouring in. "Captain, long-range sensors are detecting a massive energy signature approaching fast. It's like nothing I've ever seen before." Before Steele could respond, the crystalline sphere in the shuttle bay pulsed with newfound energy. The resonance spread through the nanobot structures and into the ship systems, briefly unifying the various temporal fields affecting the Earthrise. In that moment of synchronization, Arya's voice rang out once more. Final stage of precursor protocol initiated. All hands brace for impact. The deflector array flared with blinding intensity as Arya channeled every scrap of available power into the beam. Systems throughout the ship overloaded and failed, plunging entire sections into darkness. On the interface, the approaching energy signature tenacited into a terrifying sight. A cosmic anomaly that defied description, bearing down on them with inexorable force. As the Earthrise shuddered under the strain, caught between the expanding rift and the approaching space-time predator, Captain Steele knew that the next few moments would determine not just their fate, but potentially that of the entire galaxy. With gritted teeth, he gave what might be his final order. "All hands, brace for impact. This is not the end." The Earthrise plunged into the heart of the maelstrom, its destiny now inextricably linked to the forces of cosmic creation and destruction swirling around it. The cosmic forces unleashed their full fury upon the Earthrise as it plunged deeper into the heart of the maelstrom. The ship's hull groaned under the immense pressure, metal twisting and warping in ways it was never designed to endure. Alarms blared throughout the vessel, their urgent wails drowned out by the cacophony of destruction. Emergency lights flickered, casting an eerie red glow across the chaos-filled corridors. Hull integrity at 12% and falling. Lieutenant Chen shouted over the din, her fingers flying across her console in a desperate attempt to reroute power to critical systems. Captain Steele's teeth gritted as he surveyed the rapidly deteriorating situation. The view screen before him showed nothing but a swirling vortex of energy, punctuated by occasional flashes of debris from the destroyed Galactic Council ship. "Initiate final contingency protocol," Steele commanded, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "Activate the emergency teleportation system." As the crew scrambled to comply, the nanobot structures covering the Earthrise's exterior began to shift and coalesce. The microscopic machines formed a dense, metallic cocoon around the ship, providing an unexpected layer of protection against the intense gravitational forces threatening to tear the vessel apart. In engineering, Nolan Griffin watched in awe as the nanobot cocoon merged with the ship's internal systems. "Captain, the nanobots are integrating with our systems. They're creating some kind of hybrid structure." Before Steele could respond, the massive form of the Nexus loomed into view. Energy tendrils extended from the precursor vessel, enveloping the Earthrise in a protective bubble. The violent shaking subsided momentarily, giving the crew a brief respite. In the shuttle bay, the containment field around Zelthor and the crystalline sphere suddenly collapsed. The sphere pulsed with blinding energy, sending waves of power coursing through the ship's systems and into the surrounding space. The temporal rift warped and shifted in response, its swirling energies taking on new, unpredictable patterns. "Sir, long-range sensors are picking up a massive dark energy signature," Chen reported, her eyes wide with fear. It's absorbing the debris from the Galactic Council ship, and it's growing." The view screen shifted to show a monstrous, swirling vortex of dark energy bearing down on them. Its maw seemed to devour light itself, growing larger with each passing second. In the medical bay, Commander Drazkon's body phased in and out of normal space-time, his form a conduit for temporal energy. The chronal emissions from his transformed body surged into the ship systems, overloading circuits and causing cascading failures throughout the vessel. "Emergency teleportation system online." Griffin's voice crackled over the comm. "Initiating crew evacuation now." Throughout the ship, crew members began to dematerialize, their forms shimmering before vanishing entirely. However, the intense temporal and spatial distortions surrounding the ship interfered with the process, causing some teleportations to fail or send personnel to unexpected locations. In the AI core, Whiskers underwent a startling metamorphosis. The enhanced feline's physical form dissolved into pure energy, merging completely with the ship's computer systems. The fusion of organic and artificial intelligence created a new entity, capable of processing and manipulating the vast streams of data flowing through the Earthrise. As the space-time anomaly loomed ever closer, the Earthrise began to break apart. Massive sections of the hull tore away, exposing inner decks to the vacuum of space. The nanobot cocoon struggled to maintain its integrity, portions of it dissolving into the surrounding chaos. Captain Steele, one of the last to remain on the bridge, received a final transmission from the Nexus. Complex mathematical equations scrolled across his personal console, providing instructions for using the crystalline sphere to create a temporal sanctuary. "I need to get to the shuttle bay," Steele muttered, unstrapping himself from his command chair. "Lieutenant Chun, initiate full evacuation of all remaining personnel." "That's an order." Chun nodded grimly, her fingers already inputting the commands. Steele sprinted from the bridge, navigating through collapsing corridors and failing gravity systems. He narrowly avoided being sucked into the vacuum of space through a gaping hull breach, using his magnetic boots to cling to the deck plating. Time flowed erratically around him as he made his way towards the shuttle bay. In one section, He watched in horror as a group of crewmen aged decades in seconds, their bodies crumbling to dust before his eyes. In another, a food cart hung suspended in midair, frozen in time. As Steele neared the shuttle bay, the newly formed Whiskers AI entity initiated a ship-wide energy surge. The pulse, amplified by the nanobot structures and Commander Drazkon's chronal emissions, created a bubble of stable space-time around the remaining core of the Earthrise. The captain burst into the shuttle bay, his eyes immediately locking onto the glowing crystalline sphere. As he reached for it, the space-time anomaly made contact with the ship's outer hull. Reality itself seemed to bend and warp around him, the very fabric of space-time threatening to unravel. Steele's fingers closed around the sphere, its surface humming with power. He began inputting the complex sequence provided by the Nexus, each command bringing the temporal sanctuary closer to activation. As he worked, the shuttle bay walls began to dissolve, exposing him to the swirling chaos beyond. With a final keystroke, Steele activated the temporal sanctuary. A wave of energy erupted from the sphere, enveloping him and the remains of the Earthrise. As the bubble of stable space-time expanded, Steele caught a glimpse of a massive object emerging from the center of the temporal rift. The last thing Captain Steele saw before the temporal sanctuary fully formed was the looming shape of the space-time anomaly, its maw poised to swallow them whole. Then, in a flash of blinding light, the Earthrise and its remaining occupants vanished from normal space-time, their fate unknown as they plunged into a realm beyond conventional understanding. The blinding light faded, and Captain Steele found himself still clutching the crystalline sphere, its surface now cracked and inert. The temporal sanctuary had protected them from the worst of the space-time anomaly, but at a terrible cost. Around him, the remnants of the Earthrise shuddered and groaned, barely holding together. Alarms blared as the ship's outer hull began to disintegrate. Through a nearby viewport, Steele watched in horror as entire sections of the Earthrise were torn away, disappearing into the swirling vortex of the anomaly. The nanobot structures covering the ship's exterior shifted frantically, attempting to maintain some semblance of integrity. All hands, brace for impact. Steele shouted into his comm unit, his voice barely audible over the cacophony of destruction. Suddenly, a violent tremor rocked the shuttle bay. Steele stumbled, nearly losing his grip on the sphere. He turned just in time to see Zelthor, the Galactic Council observer, lose his footing. The alien's eyes widened in terror as he was pulled towards a gaping hull breach. No! Steele lunged forward, but it was too late. Zelthor's fingers scrabbled uselessly against the deck plating before he was sucked out into the vacuum of space. There was no time to mourn. The captain activated the crystalline sphere, inputting the final sequence provided by the Nexus. Energy pulsed from the artifact, expanding outward in concentric waves. It merged with the stable space-time bubble created by the Whiskers AI entity, forming a reinforced temporal sanctuary around the ship's core. The space-time anomaly struck the outer layers of the Earthrise with devastating force. Steele watched through the shuttle bay's force field as massive chunks of the ship were consumed by the cosmic maw. Yet the temporal sanctuary held firm, protecting the central sections and the remaining crew members. Captain, Lieutenant Chen's voice crackled over the comm. Sensors are detecting something emerging from the temporal rift. Steele's eyes widened as an enormous object materialized before them. It was a spacecraft of impossible size and complexity, its design utterly alien yet hauntingly familiar. The vessel's sleek lines and pulsating energy patterns spoke of technology far beyond even the precursors. Before Steele could fully process the sight, a brilliant beam of energy lanced out from the ancient spacecraft. For a heart-stopping moment, he feared it was a weapon. Instead, the beam enveloped the remnants of the Earthrise in a shimmering tractor field. "We're being pulled in," Griffin's voice shouted over the comm. The nanobot structures are reconfiguring to reinforce our structural integrity. As the tractor beam drew them towards a massive hangar bay of the ancient vessel, time itself seemed to warp and twist. Steele felt as if he were simultaneously moving at incredible speed and standing perfectly still. The journey lasted an eternity and a mere instant. With a bone-jarring impact, the remnants of the Earthrise settled onto the hangar bay floor. The temporal sanctuary began to flicker and destabilize. Cracks spread across the surface of the crystalline sphere in Steele's hands, tendrils of energy escaping from within. Emergency protocol initiated, the Whiskers AI entity announced, its voice resonating through the neural implants of the surviving crew members. Commencing distributed consciousness upload. Steele gasped as a flood of information poured into his mind. Around him, he saw other crew members stagger under the sudden influx of data. The Whiskers AI was dividing itself among them, sharing its vast knowledge and processing power. The nanobot shell surrounding the Earthrise remnant began to dissolve, integrating with the systems of the ancient spacecraft. Before their eyes, the hangar bay transformed. New structures sprouted from the deck, merging human, precursor, and unknown alien technologies into a bizarre hybrid environment. As the temporal sanctuary finally collapsed, Captain Steele surveyed the drastically altered surroundings. The familiar wreckage of the Earthrise now stood in stark contrast to the alien architecture that had formed around it. "Establish a secure perimeter," Steele ordered, his voice hoarse. "Salvage whatever equipment you can from the wreckage. We need to set up temporary living quarters and defensive positions." The surviving crew members moved with purpose, their actions guided by the shared knowledge of the Whiskers AI entity. They quickly erected makeshift barriers and repurposed damaged consoles to create a command center. As the crew worked, Steele approached a newly formed interface panel. Its surface rippled and shifted, adapting to his touch. Long-range sensor data flowed into his mind, painting a grim picture of the situation outside. The space-time anomaly continued to expand, devouring large portions of the star system. In the distance, he could see the Eliani fleet struggling against the anomaly's pull. Several ships were torn apart before his eyes, while others managed to activate emergency FTL drives and jump to safety. The massive form of the Nexus moved into position between the anomaly and the ancient spacecraft. It emitted a powerful energy field that temporarily halted the anomaly's growth, creating a fragile bubble of stable space around them. "Captain," Lieutenant Chin called out, her voice tinged with awe and fear. "You need to see this." Steele turned to find Chun standing before a holographic display. It showed a fleet of unknown vessels appearing at the edge of the star system. Their designs were like nothing he had ever seen, moving with impossible grace and precision as they formed a perimeter around the anomaly and the two massive spacecraft. As the crew gathered around the display, the reality of their situation sank in. They were trapped aboard an ancient unknown vessel, caught between an expanding space-time anomaly and a mysterious fleet of unprecedented power. Captain Steele gripped the cracked crystalline sphere, its surface cool against his palm. He looked at the faces of his surviving crew, their expressions a mix of fear, dedication, and the eerie calmness that came from sharing consciousness with an AI. "All right," Steele said, his voice steady despite the uncertainty that gripped him. "Let's see what this ship has to offer. We need to find a way to communicate with that fleet and figure out how to stop that anomaly. Move out in teams of 3. Stay in constant communication and be ready for anything." As the crew prepared to venture deeper into the ancient spacecraft, Steele couldn't shake the feeling that they were stepping into a new chapter of human history, one that would reshape the very fabric of the universe. Galaxy, but there was no time for philosophical musings. The arrival of the unknown fleet had changed everything. "Captain," Lieutenant Chen's voice cut through the tension. "The new vessels are forming a perimeter around us and the anomaly." Steele strode to the makeshift command center, his eyes fixed on the holographic display. The unknowns move with impossible precision, their formations shifting and adapting in real time. Whiskers, Steele called out, still adjusting to addressing the AI entity now distributed among the crew. What can you tell us about these ships? A collective shudder passed through the crew as the AI processed the request. When Chen spoke, her voice carried an otherworldly timbre. Analysis inconclusive. Their technology far exceeds our current understanding. Steele nodded grimly. Then we need to understand our own ship first. Form teams of 3. We're going deeper into this vessel. As the crew prepared, the nanobot structures from the Earthrise continued their integration with the ancient spacecraft. Walls shifted, creating stable pathways through the labyrinthine interior. Steele led the first team, with Chun and Griffin flanking him. They moved cautiously through the shifting corridors, their neural implants humming with constant updates from the Whiskers AI. Suddenly, an energy barrier materialized before them, crackling with unknown power. Defensive system, Chen announced, her eyes unfocused as she processed information from the AI. Her fingers danced across a nearby interface panel, inputting a complex sequence. The barrier flickered and disappeared. Nice work, Steele said, pressing forward. They encountered several more such obstacles, each one disabled by the growing symbiosis between the crew and the ship systems. As they progressed deeper, the architecture became increasingly alien, defying conventional understanding of spatial relationships. After what felt like hours of navigation, they emerged into a vast chamber that pulsed with energy. Holographic displays filled the air, showing incomprehensible data streams and real-time models of the space-time anomaly outside. "This must be the command center," Griffin whispered, his voice filled with awe. Steele approached the central console, its surface rippling in response to his presence. As he placed his hand on the interface, a flood of information surged through his neural implant. He gasped, staggering under the weight of the knowledge. "Captain," Chun rushed to his side, steadying him. Steele blinked, his mind blown from the data transfer. I think I understand. This ship, it's not just a spacecraft. It's a temporal vessel." Before he could elaborate, alarms blared throughout the chamber. The holographic displays shifted, showing the space-time anomaly pulsing with new energy. Each pulse sent shockwaves through the ship, causing power fluctuations and communication disruptions. "The anomaly's changing," Griffin reported, his hands flying over a nearby console. "It's affecting the unknown fleet too. They're pulling back." Steele gritted his teeth, fighting to maintain his focus amidst the cascading information from the ship systems. "We need to activate the defenses. If that anomaly expands." His words were cut short as the ship shuddered violently. The walls around them began to shift and reconfigure, revealing massive weapon arrays and energy shield generators. "What did you do?" Chen asked, her eyes wide. "It wasn't me," Steele replied. "The ship. It's responding to a dormant protocol. We've woken something up." Outside, the unknown fleet reacted to the ancient spacecraft's transformation, taking up defensive positions. The tension in the system ratcheted up several notches. Amidst the chaos, a new signal cut through the noise. The Nexus, still maintaining its position between the ancient ship and the anomaly, initiated communication. Complex equations and symbolic messages flooded the command center's displays. "It's trying to establish a common language," Chen said, her voice overlaid with the Whiskers AI's analytical tones. "For negotiation, perhaps?" Before they could decipher the message, the space-time anomaly surged. Energy tendrils lashed out, engulfing several ships from the unknown fleet. In an instant, the vessels vanished from normal space-time. "We're out of time," Steele declared. "We need to use this ship's temporal drive. It might be our only chance to escape and figure out what's really going on." As the crew worked feverishly to activate the temporal systems, energy surges reverberated throughout the vessel. Dormant sections came to life, revealing vast chambers filled with stasis pods. "Captain," Griffin called out, his voice tight with shock. "You need to see this." Steele turned to a newly activated display, showing rows upon rows of occupied stasis pods. The beings inside were unlike anything he had ever seen, silicon-based life forms of incredible complexity. "The original crew," Steele breathed. A violent shudder ran through the ship as the temporal drive neared activation. Outside, the space-time anomaly began to collapse in on itself, the gravitational forces threatening to pull everything into oblivion. Steele made a split-second decision. Extend our shields around the Nexus. We can't leave it behind. The ancient spacecraft's energy shields expanded, enveloping the massive Nexus. Power levels dropped precipitously, the temporal drive straining under the additional load. As the unknown fleet closed in, their intentions unclear, the temporal drive reached critical mass. Reality itself seemed to bend around them as the ancient spacecraft, with the Nexus in tow, phased out of normal space-time. The last thing Steele saw before the temporal vortex engulfed them was the approaching fleet caught in the wake of their departure. Then, everything dissolved into a maelstrom of swirling energy and fractured time. Captain Steele and his crew, merged with the Whiskers AI entity and in control of an unimaginably advanced temporal ship, hurtled through the time stream. Their destination was unknown, the consequences of their actions yet to unfold. As the familiar universe faded from view, one thing became clear. Their journey was far from finished. Over. As the familiar universe faded from view, one thing became clear. Their journey was nowhere near the end. The ancient spacecraft shuddered violently as it hurtled through the temporal vortex, its structure groaning under the immense strain. Captain Steele gripped the central console, his fingers tightening as he fought to maintain his balance. Around him, the command center erupted into a cacophony of alarms and frantic activity. Structural integrity failing. Chen shouted over the din, her fingers dancing across a holographic interface. "We're breaking apart." Steele's mind raced, processing the flood of information from the ship systems and the Whiskers AI entity. "Activate inertial dampeners," he ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos. "Redirect power from non-essential systems." The ship's nanobot structures responded instantly, creating a web of energy fields throughout the vessel. The violent shaking subsided, replaced by an eerie stillness that belied the tumultuous journey through time and space. Griffin's eyes widened as he monitored the external sensors. "Captain, we've got company. Several ships from the unknown fleet got caught in our wake." Before Steele could respond, reality itself seemed to twist and warp around them. With a final, gut-wrenching lurch, the temporal vortex collapsed, spitting out the ancient spacecraft and its unexpected companions into normal space-time. Steele blinked, his eyes adjusting to the sudden change. The command center's holographic displays flickered to life, revealing their new surroundings. They had emerged in an unfamiliar star system, surrounded by a vast field of debris. "Status report," Steele demanded, scanning the displays. Chen's voice carried a mix of awe and concern. "We're in one piece, sir, but barely. Multiple systems are offline, including long-range communications and main weapons. The temporal drive is intact but needs time to recharge." "And the Nexus?" Steele asked, a knot forming in his stomach. Griffin shook his head. "No sign of it. Sir, it must have been lost during the jump." Steele nodded grimly, then turned his attention to the debris field. "What are we looking at out there?" The Whiskers AI spoke through Chun, her eyes unfocused as she processed the data. "The debris appears to be the remnants of an ancient space battle. The technology is far beyond anything in our databases." "Sir," Griffin interrupted, "3 ships from the unknown fleet survived the jump. They're nearby but seem to be disabled. Steele's mind raced, weighing their options. All right, we need to act fast. Chun, coordinate with engineering to get our systems back online. Griffin, keep an eye on those unknown ships and the debris field. I want to know the moment anything changes. As the crew sprang into action, Steele felt a subtle shift beneath his feet. The ship's nanobot structures were already at work, reconfiguring damaged sections and rerouting power. He allowed himself a moment of amazement at the vessel's capabilities before refocusing on the task at hand. "Captain," Griffin called out, his voice tinged with excitement. "You need to see this." Steele hurried over to Griffin's station, where a new holographic display had appeared. It showed a massive hangar bay deep within the ship, previously hidden or inactive. Inside, a fleet of smaller craft sat in neat rows, their sleek designs hinting at incredible speed and firepower. "It seems our repairs triggered something," Griffin explained. "These ships just came online." Steele nodded, his mind already formulating plans. "Get a team down there to assess those craft. We may need them soon." Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the command center. Chen's hands flew across her console, her eyes wide. "Sir, we've got movement. The unknown fleet ships are powering up." "Raise shields," Steele ordered, his voice calm but firm. "Prepare to launch our new fighters if necessary." As the crew rushed to comply, another alert sounded. This time, it was the ship's internal sensors that demanded attention. Steele turned to a nearby display, his breath catching in his throat as he saw the source of the disturbance. Deep within the ship, in a chamber they had yet to fully explore, rows of stasis pods were showing signs of activation. The ship's systems were automatically adjusting the environmental conditions in response. The original crew, Steele breathed, remembering the glimpse he had caught of the silicon-based life forms earlier. "They're waking up." Before he could issue new orders, the entire ship shuddered. Outside, the debris field had come to life. Massive chunks of ancient wreckage moved under their own power, converging on the ancient spacecraft and the nearby unknown fleet ships. Steele's mind raced, processing the multiple threats they now faced. He quickly divided the crew into teams, assigning priorities with rapid-fire precision. "Chun, take a team and finish those repairs. I want weapons online yesterday. Griffin, you're with me in the hangar bay. We need those fighters ready to launch. And someone get down to those stasis pods. I want a secure perimeter and full containment protocols in place." As the crew scrambled to carry out his orders, Steele felt a familiar presence in his mind. The Whiskers AI entity, distributed among them all, provided a constant stream of data and analysis. "Captain," the AI's voice resonated in his thoughts, "I'm detecting an anomalous energy signature within the debris field." Steele focused on the new information, watching as the holographic displays shifted to highlight a massive structure hidden among the wreckage. As he watched, the structure began to emit complex energy pulses, causing even more of the surrounding debris to reactivate. "A space station," Steele murmured, his mind racing with the implications. Outside, the unknown fleet ships had taken up defensive positions around the ancient spacecraft. Their actions suggested a temporary alliance born of mutual danger. Steele made a quick decision. Prepare a series of mathematical sequences and visual signals. Let's see if we can communicate with our new allies. As the crew worked frantically to address the multiple crises, Steele felt the ship changing around them. The awakening of the silicon-based life forms had triggered new protocols, altering the vessel's internal layout and systems in ways they had yet to fully comprehend. Steele took a deep breath, steadying himself for the challenges ahead. They faced threats from within and without, caught between awakening creators, mysterious allies, and an ancient battlefield come to life. And somewhere out there, the nexus and the answers it held remained lost in the time stream. The captain's voice cut through the tension in the command center. All hands, prepare for potential engagement. We're about to find out what the ship can really do. Do, Steele finished, his voice carrying the weight of command. As if in response to his words, the ship's internal systems flashed to life, revealing a hidden treasure trove of defensive capabilities. On a newly activated display, Steele saw a vast hangar bay filled with sleek, smaller craft. "Griffin with me," Steele ordered, striding towards the exit. "Chin, you have the con keep working on those repairs and monitor the situation." As Steele and Griffin raced through the corridors, the ship's nanobot structures reconfigured around them, creating a direct path to the hangar. They burst into the cavernous space, greeted by rows of gleaming vessels unlike anything they had seen before. Lieutenant Sarah Campbell, the ship's top pilot, was already there, running her hand along the smooth hull of one of the craft. "Sir," she said, snapping to attention, "these beauties just came online. They're like nothing I've ever flown before." Steele nodded, his mind racing. "Lieutenant, I sont your best pilots. We need these craft in the air now. Form a defensive perimeter around the ship." As Campbell sprang into action, barking orders to her team, Steele's communicator crackled to life. "Captain," Chen's voice came through, tense with urgency. "The debris field, it's coming alive." Steele watched as Campbell's team scrambled into the cockpits of the alien craft. With a series of high-pitched whines, the hangar bay doors slid open, revealing the star-studded expanse of space beyond. "Launch now, Lieutenant," Steele commanded. "We'll feed you targeting data as soon as we have it." The smaller craft shot out of the hangar in perfect formation, their engines leaving trails of blue energy in their wake. Steele and Griffin rushed back to the command center, arriving just in time to see the full scope of the threat on the main display. Massive chunks of debris were coalescing, forming crude but menacing attack drones. They moved with surprising speed, launching volleys of energy projectiles towards both the ancient spacecraft and the nearby unknown fleet ships. "Evasive maneuvers," Steele shouted, gripping the edge of the command console. The ship responded instantly, its advanced inertial dampeners allowing for impossible turns that would have crushed a human crew in a conventional vessel. Outside, Campbell's team engaged the makeshift drones, their advanced weaponry tearing through the reanimated debris. But for every drone they destroyed, two more seemed to take its place. Amidst the chaos of battle, a new alert sounded. Chen's eyes widened as she read the incoming data. "Captain, the stasis pods, they're opening." Steele felt a chill run down his spine. He had almost forgotten about the ship's original crew in the heat of the moment. "Security team to the stasis chamber," he ordered. "Full containment protocols." Before he could issue further commands, a shimmering figure materialized in the center of the command center. It was tall, its body composed of interlocking crystal structures that pulsed with internal light. When it spoke, it was through a series of complex light patterns that the Whiskers AI instantly translated. "I am ZYX Tal, commander of this vessel," the being announced. "Why have you awakened us?" Steele stepped forward, his hand instinctively moving to his sidearm before he thought better of it. "I'm Captain John Steele of the Earth Alliance. We didn't intend to wake you. It seems to have happened when we activated the ship's defensive systems." ZYXTAL's crystalline form shifted, creating new patterns of light. "Organic beings controlling our ship? Fascinating, but now is not the time for lengthy introductions. We are under attack." As if to emphasize the point, the ship shuddered under a particularly heavy barrage. Steele nodded grimly. "We've launched fighters, but we're outnumbered. Any suggestions?" The silicon being moved to one of the control interfaces, its crystalline appendages interfacing directly with the ship systems. "There is a weapon," ZYXTAL explained, integrated into the ship's core. "It can disable large numbers of enemy units simultaneously." but its activation requires precise calibration of the crystal matrix, a task only we can perform. Steele hesitated for a moment, weighing the risks of allowing the newly awakened beings access to critical systems. But another violent shake of the ship made the decision for him. "Do it," he commanded. As ZYX began the intricate process of reactivating the ancient weapon, a new holographic projection appeared in the command center. It showed a reptilian humanoid, its scales glistening under the light of a distant star. "I am Admiral Croft of the Zarkon Imperium," the being announced. "We face a common enemy. I propose an alliance, temporary as it may be." Steele exchanged glances with Chun and Griffin, then nodded. "Agreed, Admiral. Let's coordinate our defense." As the battle raged outside, with Campbell's fighters now joined by Zarkon vessels in a united front against the swarm of debris drones, Steele felt the ship humming with newfound energy. The silicon beings, under ZYX's guidance, were bringing long-dormant systems back online. Suddenly, the main display lit up with a massive energy signature. The debris field parted, revealing a colossal space station that had been hidden within its depths. As they watched, the station's weapon emplacements came to life, launching a devastating barrage against the combined human, Zarkon, and silicon being forces. "All hands, brace for impact," Steele shouted, his voice nearly drowned out by the wail of alarms. The ancient spacecraft shuddered under the assault, its shields flaring bright as they absorbed the massive energy discharges. In the midst of the chaos, ZYX's voice cut through the din. "The core weapon is ready, Captain. But be warned, its use will drain a significant portion of our power reserves." Steele's eyebrows furrowed as he watched several of Campbell's fighters wink out of existence, overwhelmed by the station's attack. He made his decision. "Do it." The ship seemed to hold its breath for a moment. Then a blinding beam of energy erupted from its bow. The beam cut through the swarm of debris drones like a scythe through wheat, leaving nothing but dissipating energy in its wake. The space station, however, remained intact, its shields glowing bright as they absorbed the brunt of the attack. As the energy beam faded, Steele turned to Admiral Croft's holographic image. "Admiral, we need to take that station. I propose a joint boarding action." Croft's reptilian features twisted into what might have been a smile. "A bold plan, Captain. We accept." As Steele began assembling a strike team, including human crew members, Zarkon warriors, and two of the silicon beings for their technical expertise, the Whiskers AI's voice echoed in his mind. "Captain," the AI said, its tone urgent, "I'm detecting an energy signature from the station. It matches the Nexus." Steele's eyes widened. The precursor vessel, lost during their temporal jump, might hold the key to understanding the anomalies they'd encountered. Its recovery had just become a top priority. As the strike team prepared to board a modified shuttle, Steele addressed them one final time. "This mission is critical," he said, his voice firm. "We're not just fighting for our survival now, but for answers that could change everything. Let's make it count." The shuttle's engines roared to life as the bay doors opened, revealing the chaotic battlefield beyond. With the ancient spacecraft providing covering fire, the strike team launched into the fray, their destination the mysterious space station that loomed before them. The shuttle's engines roared to life, propelling the strike team into the chaotic battlefield beyond. Captain Steele watched the craft disappear into the debris field, then turned his attention back to the command center's holographic displays. "Chun, keep our defenses focused on protecting that shuttle," Steele ordered, his eyes tracking the small craft's progress. "Torres, status report on our system's integration." Chief Engineer Michael Torres' voice crackled over the comm. "We've successfully integrated the salvage Earthrise tech, Captain. It's giving us a significant boost in coordination with the Zarkon ships." As if to demonstrate, the holographic display shifted, showing a real-time overlay of the Zarkon fleet's movements and weapon systems. Steele nodded in approval, watching as the combined human and alien forces worked in concert to repel the endless waves of debris drones. Aboard the shuttle, Lieutenant Sarah Campbell's hands danced across the controls, guiding the craft through a treacherous maze of twisted metal and energy discharges. "Hang on," she called out to the strike team. "We're about to hit some turbulence." The shuttle shuddered as Campbell executed a series of tight maneuvers, narrowly avoiding a barrage of energy bolts from the space station's defense systems. In the shuttle's hold, human crew members checked their weapons while Zarkon warriors hissed in anticipation of the coming battle. The two silicon beings remained motionless, their crystalline forms pulsing with internal light as they prepared for the technical challenges ahead. Back on the ancient spacecraft, ZYX Tau and the other silicon beings worked tirelessly to reactivate dormant systems. Their efforts paid off as a hidden chamber deep within the ship suddenly hummed to life. "Captain Steele," ZYX Tau's translated voice echoed through the command center. "We've uncovered advanced sensor arrays. Bringing them online now." The main display flickered, then grit into a highly detailed image of the space station. Steele leaned forward, his eyes widening as he took in the new information. "It's not a single structure," he murmured, tracing the outlines of distinct technologies merged into a grotesque whole. "It's multiple alien systems forcibly combined." As the strike team's shuttle approached the station's outer hull, Campbell's voice crackled over the comm. "We've reached the target. Preparing for breach." On the shuttle's view screen, the station's hull loomed large, a patchwork of different materials and designs. The team worked quickly, using cutting tools and precisely placed explosives to create an entry point. With a muffled boom and a hiss of escaping atmosphere, they breached the airlock. "We're in," Campbell reported, "splitting into teams now." The strike force divided, each group setting off with their assigned objectives. Campbell led her team through twisting corridors, their weapons at the ready as they searched for signs of the Nexus. Crothax, a towering Zarkon warrior, guided his group towards the station's weapon systems, while Dr. Marcus Reeves headed for the control center. As the teams penetrated deeper into the station, they encountered increasingly bizarre and deadly defenses. Campbell's group found themselves in a firefight with hybrid creatures that seemed cobbled together from various alien species and mechanical parts. "What the hell are these things?" one of her team members shouted, ducking behind cover as a creature with too many limbs and glowing cybernetic eyes opened fire. "Stay focused," Campbell ordered, her voice steady despite the chaos. "We need to find that Nexus." Meanwhile, on the ancient spacecraft, the Whiskers AI's voice resonated in Steele's mind. "Captain, I'm detecting an anomalous energy signature within our own vessel." Steele frowned, gesturing to a nearby security team. "Show me," he commanded, following the AI's guidance through the ship's reconfiguring corridors. They arrived at a previously hidden chamber, its walls lined with shimmering devices that seemed to bend the very fabric of space-time. As Steele stepped inside, holographic images sprang to life around him, showing glimpses of past events and possible futures. "A temporal observatory," Steele breathed, his legs shaking at the implications. Back on the space station, Crothax's team had reached the weapon control systems, only to find them protected by impenetrable energy fields. The silicon beings accompanying them interface with the alien technology, their crystalline forms flickering as they work to bypass the security measures. "Hurry," Crothax growled, his scaled skin glistening with sweat as he and his warriors fended off waves of security drones. "We cannot hold this position indefinitely." In another part of the station, Dr. Reeves and his team made a chilling discovery. They entered a vast chamber filled with stasis pods, each containing a perfectly preserved specimen from various alien species, including humans from different time periods. "My God," Reeves whispered, his hand hovering over a pod containing what appeared to be a Roman centurion. "What is this place?" As the battle raged both inside and outside the station, Steele found himself transfixed by the visions in the temporal observatory. One image recurred with haunting frequency. Earth under attack by a massive fleet of hybrid ships, eerily similar to the forces they now faced. The Whiskers AI's voice cut through Steele's contemplation. Captain, based on the data from this observatory, I believe the space station serves as a nexus point for multiple timelines. Its destruction could have far-reaching consequences across different realities. Before Steele could fully process this information, Campbell's voice crackled over the comm. Captain, we've found it. The Nexus is here, but it's integrated into the station systems. We're working on extracting it now. Outside, the battle took a dramatic turn. The debris field, as if guided by some malevolent intelligence, began to coalesce into a massive structure. It twisted and reformed, taking on the shape of a colossal predator, its body composed of countless smaller drones and pieces of ancient technology. All ships, evasive maneuvers. Steele shouted, watching in horror as the debris construct launched a coordinated attack on both the ancient spacecraft and the Zarkon fleet. Faced with this escalating threat, Steele made a fateful decision. ZYX Tau, activate the ship's most powerful weapon system. We need to end this now. As the Silicon beings began the complex process of channeling energy from the ship's core into a massive crystal array, Steele's mind raced. The strike team was still aboard the station, working to secure the Nexus and disable the weapon systems. The debris construct posed an imminent threat to their entire force, and the Temple Observatory had revealed the possibility of an even greater conflict looming in their future. With the fate of multiple timelines potentially hanging in the balance, Steele watched as the ancient spacecraft's ultimate weapon powered up, preparing to unleash its temporal energy against the monstrous debris construct. The battle had reached its critical juncture, and the next few moments would determine not just their survival, but possibly the fate of reality itself. As the ancient spacecraft's ultimate weapon powered up, the air crackled with anticipation. Steele's eyes remained fixed on the holographic display, watching as the massive debris construct loomed ever closer. Weapon at full charge, Captain, ZYX Tau reported, his crystalline form pulsing with energy. Steele took a deep breath. Fire. A blinding beam of temporal energy erupted from the ship, striking the debris construct head-on. The effect was immediate and spectacular. The outer layers of the monstrous creation began to disintegrate, fragments of metal and alien technology scattering across space like a pyroclastic flow. But as the dust settled, Steele's triumph turned to dismay. At the heart of the construct, a core of highly advanced technology remained untouched by the temporal assault. This central mass detached itself from the crumbling debris, its surface shimmering with an otherworldly energy. All hands, brace for impact. Steele shouted as the core accelerated towards the space station at an alarming speed. Inside the station, Lieutenant Sarah Campbell and her team worked feverishly to free the Nexus from its integration with the station systems. Sweat beaded on Campbell's forehead as she carefully disconnected the final coupling. Almost there, she muttered, her hands steady despite the pressure. With a final click, the Nexus came free. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, without warning, the device emitted a powerful energy pulse that rippled through the station. Lights flickered, and systems went dark all around them. In another section of the station, Dr. Marcus Reeves stumbled as the pulse hit, momentarily disoriented. As his vision cleared, he noticed the stasis pods around him powering down, their occupants stirring for the first time in who knew how long. Team, change your plans, Reeves called out. We need to evacuate these people. Prioritize those who look like they might have technical expertise. As his team began the revival process, one pod hissed open, revealing a woman in her mid-30s. She sat up, blinking rapidly as she took in her surroundings. Where? When am I? She asked, her voice hoarse from disuse. Reeves approached her cautiously. I'm Dr. Marcus Reeves. You're on a space station, and we're in the middle of a crisis. Can you tell me your name and occupation?" The woman's eyes sharpened, focusing on Reeves. "Dr. Emilia Vasquez, temple physicist." "What year is it?" Reeves helped her to her feet. "That's complicated, but your expertise might be exactly what we need right now." Meanwhile, Crothax and his Zarkon warriors had finally breached the station's weapon control systems. The silicon beings interface with the alien technology, their forms flickering as they worked to shut down the station's offensive capabilities. "We've done it," Crothax growled triumphantly as the weapon systems began to power down. His victory was short-lived. Alarms blared throughout the station, and a computerized voice announced, "Self-destruct sequence initiated. All personnel evacuate immediately." Back on the ancient spacecraft, Steele watched in horror as the core of the debris construct merged with the outer structure of the space station. The fusion sent shockwaves through space, causing spatial distortions that warped the very fabric of reality around the station. "ZYX-Tau, we need to recalibrate the temporal weapon for a more focused attack," Steele ordered. "And get me Torres. We need to boost our power output." As ZYX-Tau and the silicon beings worked on the weapon, Chief Engineer Michael Torres and his team rushed to integrate more of the salvaged Earthrise technology into their systems. On the station, Campbell's team escorted the freed captives towards their shuttle. Dr. Vasquez, now fully alert, worked alongside Reeves to access the station's central computer core. "This isn't just a space station," Vasquez explained, her fingers flying over the alien controls. "It's a temporal anchor, designed to stabilize a specific timeline across multiple realities." Campbell's voice crackled over the comm. "We've got the Nexus, but these spatial distortions are getting worse. Sections of the station are literally disappearing and reappearing at random." Steele's voice cut through the chaos. "All teams, evacuate immediately. We're preparing for a final strike with the temple weapon." As the last of the strike team and freed captives boarded the shuttle, Campbell and a small group remained behind, maneuvering the Nexus towards the exit. The station groaned and shuddered around them, entire corridors vanishing into thin air. Outside, the battle raged on. The Zarkon ships, coordinating with the ancient spacecraft, executed a series of precise strikes against the remaining debris field. Bright flashes of energy lit up space as the Allied forces pushed back against the relentless swarm. On the ancient spacecraft's bridge, Steele received a troubling report from the Whiskers AI. "Captain, I'm detecting a massive energy buildup within the station's core. Analysis suggests a temporal singularity is forming." Steele's face hardened. "ZYX-Tau, status on the weapon?" "Recalibration complete, Captain. Power levels at maximum." Steele nodded grimly. "Prepare to fire on my command." The shuttle detached from the disintegrating station just as Campbell and her team emerged, guiding the Nexus. They raced towards the shuttle, dodging chunks of debris and pockets of warped space-time. As the last of the team boarded, a visible rift in space-time began to form around the station. The shuttle's engines roared to life, propelling them away from the impending catastrophe. Steele watched the sensor readings, his hand hovering over the firing control. The rift grew larger, threatening to engulf everything in its path. "Now!" Steele commanded. The ancient spacecraft unleashed its full power, a massive burst of temporal energy engulfing both the space station and the remaining debris field. The energy wave expanded outward, distorting the very fabric of space-time as it approached the Allied fleet. As the blinding light of the temporal weapon filled the view screens, Steele and his crew braced themselves, uncertain of what consequences their risky move would bring. The temporal energy wave expanded outward, engulfing the space station and debris field in its radiant embrace. Captain Steele and his crew watched in awe as the station began to break apart, its components scattering across different temporal planes like shards of a shattered mirror. The Allied forces held their collective breath as the wave approached their position. Steele gripped the arms of his command chair, bracing for impact. But instead of destruction, the temporal energy coalesced around their ships, forming a protective bubble that shielded them from the collapsing space-time continuum. Inside this chronal cocoon, time slowed to a crawl. Through the view screens, Steele and his crew witnessed the birth and death of stars in the span of heartbeats. Galaxies formed and dissolved like cosmic sandcastles, and countless civilizations rose and fell in the blink of an eye. "Captain," Zweigstall's crystalline voice cut through the awed silence, "I'm detecting an anomalous energy signature approaching our position." Before Steele could respond, a small, glowing object phased through the ancient spacecraft's hull and materialized on the bridge. The crew gasped as they recognized the form of a cat, composed entirely of pulsating energy. The Whiskers AI's voice echoed through the ship systems. "It appears our feline friend has undergone a rather unique transformation." The energy whiskers padded across the bridge, leaving faint luminescent paw prints in its wake. It sat before Steele and meowed, a sound that seemed to resonate on multiple frequencies. "The strongest predator has been neutralized," the Whiskers AI translated. "The galaxy is safe. For now." Steele knelt before the radiant feline, his hand hovering just above its shimmering form. "Welcome back, old friend," he murmured. A sudden lurch rocked the ship, snapping the crew's attention back to their predicament. On the main display, the Nexus pulsed with an otherworldly light, its energy signature intensifying. Dr. Amelia Vasquez's voice crackled over the comm. "Captain, the Nexus is reacting to the temporal distortions. I believe it's trying to stabilize our pocket of space-time. Can we use it to get back to our own time?" Steele asked, his mind racing with possibilities. "Possibly," Vasquez replied, "but we'll need to combine our knowledge and technologies. The Nexus alone isn't enough." Steele nodded, his decision made. Zweigstall, work with Dr. Vasquez and the Whiskers AI. Pool your resources and find a way to harness the Nexus's power. Let's bring everyone home. The next few hours passed in a flurry of activity. Humans, silicon beings, and Zarkon worked side by side, their disparate knowledge merging into a unified plan. The energy whiskers prowled the ship, its presence seeming to bridge the gap between organic and artificial intelligence. Finally, Dr. Vasquez's voice rang out with a mix of excitement and trepidation. "We're ready, Captain. The energy whiskers will act as a conduit, channeling the Nexus's chronal energy through the ship systems." Steele took a deep breath, surveying his crew. "This is it, people. Brace yourselves for temporal transit." As the plan was set in motion, the bubble of slowed time began to contract. The crew experienced a series of rapid time jumps, each more disorienting than the last. They witnessed key moments from their journey in reverse order, like a cosmic film reel spinning backwards. Steele saw the space station battle, fragments of debris reassembling into cohesive structures. He glimpsed their encounter with the Eliani fleet, ships unexploding in brilliant flashes of light. Finally, he watched their original confrontation that led to their temporal displacement, feeling a sense of déjà vu wash over him. The energy whiskers yowled, its form stretching and contorting as it channeled the immense power of the Nexus. The ancient spacecraft shuddered, its systems straining under the temporal forces. With a blinding flash that seemed to last an eternity and no time at all, the ancient spacecraft materialized in familiar space. Steele blinked, his eyes adjusting to the sudden change. On the main view screen, he saw Earth, beautiful and blue, hanging in the void. "Status report," he called out, his voice hoarse. "We've arrived in Earth's solar system, Captain," Zweigstall reported. "Temporal readings indicate we've returned mere moments after our initial disappearance." Steele let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Any sign of the Zarkon ships or the shuttle carrying the Nexus. Affirmative, the Whisker's eye chimed in. All Allied vessels are accounted for and have successfully made the temporal jump. As the crew worked to reestablish their bearings, Steele opened a channel to Earth's defense forces. He braced himself for the task ahead, explaining their incredible journey and the new reality they now faced. This is Captain James Steele of the... He paused, realizing their ship no longer bore its original designation. He glanced at the energy whiskers, curled contentedly on a nearby console, and smiled. This is Captain James Steele of the Cosmic Whisker, requesting immediate contact with Earth Command. We have one hell of a story to tell.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.